Alright everyone, a very good morning. Welcome back to the flight deck with Captain Nabs. And we are back for another live stream of A Pilot's Life live on Twitch. Pardon me, I have a little bit of a sore throat that I'm trying to get over, and I thought I was going to be okay, and 10 seconds into the stream I'm already coughing. So we'll see how this goes. At least the one thing I'll say for today, it's a relatively short flight, so hopefully I can get it in without wearing my voice out completely. Today's my last day off for the week, so it was kind of a do or die day today. So I figured let's do. I enjoy doing this, I really do, and I know some of you guys enjoy being here and watching this as well. So yeah, I decided can we fly formation in F-18s? No. You can fly an F-18 if you want to, but I am going to be trying to do this flight here, the next flight on my Pilot's Life career. Thanks Uncle Wiki for encouraging him. Today's flight is Jackson Hole, excuse me, not Jacksonville, Jackson Hole, back to Seattle. So we're just on the northwest corner of Wyoming here. We're just going to go really quick flight back to Seattle here. It's like an hour-and-a-half flight. It's not a very long flight, but yeah, we'll get this underway. I have not flown on this sim nearly as much as I'd like to this summer. In a way, it's a good thing because I've just been that busy. I've just been so busy that even just like, you know, recreational simming has almost been non-existent. By the time I get through my whole day and the kids go to bed and I'm ready to think about simming, it's like I want to go to bed in like an hour. I don't want to do anything that's very long and committed. So I end up not doing very much with the sim in the summer. I think that'll shift once we get back to the more normal fall schedule. But for now, it's yeah, I'm not online nearly as much as I would like to be. I'm working a lot, and then when I'm not working, I'm home and I'm trying to spend as much time as possible with the family. So how do I do my career? Well, right here, this is it right here. It's called A Pilot's Life. This is chapter 2, which is kind of like version 2. It's a piece of software from SimBit World, and what it does is it lets you simulate the life of being an airline pilot. So basically you get yourself a bunch of licenses and then you have to apply to different airlines. And the airlines will accept you or reject you. As you can see down here, I applied to Southwest, and my application was rejected. I'm going to probably try again, but for now my application's been rejected. But you can apply to different airlines. Lower end airlines will more likely hire you. It's an external piece of software. If you go, just search for A Pilot's Life Chapter 2, and you'll find it. It's an external piece of software, runs outside of the sim, but it tracks what's happening in the sim. So when you do an actual flight, it is tracked in the sim. Your performance is rated. So for all the flights I've done, my performance is rated, and then you get points based on your performance. So you know, whether the landing rate's too high, forget to turn the taxi light off, simple things like that. But you get 100 total points. It scores you. I generally get to the 90s for the most part. But you know, some of it is just like knowing the system and tricking the system, as it were. But it does track you throughout, and then you get paid, and you get promotions as well. You get experience. As you get experience, you get promotions. You get better pay rates, and hopefully your life gets better. You can apply to better airlines. So I am working for Alaska Airlines right now, and that's what we're doing today. So the nice thing about the software, the really neat thing about the software, is that once you work at an airline, it generates you a schedule. So you can go ahead and generate a bunch of schedules and pick the one you like the most. You can set up a bunch of criteria, but basically once you're assigned a schedule, you have to fly that schedule. So this is the remaining schedule for my current month, if you will. Is Jackson Hole to Seattle, then Seattle to Anchorage, and Anchorage to Seattle. When I finish all of those legs, I can generate a new schedule. And I just realized, of course, I'm not on here, so there I am. Hey, everybody, good morning. And yeah, so that's probably the neatest thing about this whole thing, is that the work for different airlines, and you're competing with different with people on this network as well. So if you notice in the job market, there's a specific number of jobs at each airline, and some of them are filled, some of them are not. There has been some talk about tweaking it, and I'm hoping tweaking it downwards, because there's so many vacancies at every airline that there's no way that you're not really competing with anybody else for these jobs. There's so many vacancies all the time. You're not really barely competing. So I would love to see the job numbers tweaked down a little bit. You know, maybe chopped up by about 20 or 30%. That way, some of the airlines do fill up, where you have to compete with other people to get in there. This is a pilot's life. This is a civilian pilot's life simulator. So that, yeah, it's only airlines. It just keeps track of airline schedules. If you want, I don't know if there's any military equivalent out there. But this was established as a civilian airline, and simulator. So it gives you a chance to get jobs at different airlines. You can switch jobs at any point in time, fly the different routes. You can see the routes. So if I just go, just pick an airline, for example, Aer Lingus, it will actually generate routes based on the real world flights this airline does. So here's the real world network of Aer Lingus, and so those are the types of aircraft you can fly on these routes. These are all the routes that you can do. You can see them on the map down here, all the places they fly to, and so it'll assign you a random month of flights out of this list. So it's kind of semi-realistic in that it uses a lot of real-world data for the routes and everything. These are all real-world airlines, and there is, of course, some leeway to kind of keep some gaming to it. But I like the schedule generation feature. I think it's one of the neatest parts of the whole thing. Is it really makes it gives you something to do with your sim. You have to try and get through that schedule that month, and there's no actual time limit on it. But there's some neat contracts as well. If you can do a lot of flights in a week, or a lot of flights per week, you can actually get pay bonuses. So I don't usually do that much, but if you were, you can get pay bonuses and everything else. So the other thing, of course, you have to have type ratings. So if I go to shop, you've got to actually get licensed to fly different types of aircraft. So you get a certain amount of money at the start. You can buy aircraft licenses, and then after that, you have to buy more aircraft licenses. So I have an A320 license, I have a 737 license, and I have a CRJ family license. So those are the 8 types of aircraft I can fly. As you can see, the rates vary for different families, but if you want to fly more different types of aircraft for different airlines, you've got to pay for your own license for that airline and for that type of aircraft, and then you can fly it in the sim. If you try to fly that airplane in the sim without having a license, you won't get paid for it. So it's a neat way of doing it. By the way, flew successfully Hong Kong to Vancouver on the Kuro 788. Very happy to have a wide body for long haul that works. That's good to hear. I looked at it. I glanced at it in the last session, and then I haven't looked at it since because I haven't had time. So, yeah. Anyway, so here we are in beautiful Jackson Hole, Wyoming. The sun's just coming up. It's looking like a bit of a foggy morning out here in the mountains this morning. It actually just sort of fogged up even in the last 10 minutes or so since I booted up the sim. It's kind of starting to fog in a little bit here, but hopefully we can get out of here without hitting that beautiful mountain behind us there. Yeah, and that's just it. It gives you something different to do. I don't just do a pilot's life, but I do it on stream just for fun. And if you go back in my stream history, if you go to my YouTube channel, you can see my entire pilot's life history. 10 seasons, about 10 episodes per season, give or take. So over 100 episodes, I think, thus far, of me flying around various aircraft, various places around the world, and try to keep it as realistic as possible. That's my goal here. Try and provide you a realistic insight into how to operate, how an airline operates. Not just how to operate the airplane, but how to operate within an airline structure as well. So, anywho, let's get started because, as I said, my voice is not doing great today. I'm afraid it's going to give out on me before the end of the stream, so I would like to get it started. So let's hop in the flight deck here. Let's, first of all, boot up my trusty FS2 crew here. Let's start setting up.
Roger.
Today we have Sebastian from Deutschland is our FO on FS2 crew. Let's get some power going on here. Let me know if that's too loud, too quiet, or what you guys think about it. Start those IRSs aligning. The EECs look good. Quick overspeed test, flight quarter test. All right, gear lights look good. Make sure we got the position lights on, steady. Yep, we got those. All right, and everything's going to start booting up for us here. Now, the one thing today that is a little bit unfortunate, and it's a little bit annoying, is this is the Exonos Jackson Hole. The one thing that's a bit annoying about this is that there's no taxiways defined. So I cannot use GSX today to board anything, to board fuel or anything else. So actually, now that I think about it, I might as well just pre-board all of my fuel here. So let's just check my sim brief flight plan here, and actually let me just do it this way because it's just easier to see it on stream. Sim brief panel, fetch my current flight plan, and let's go to the payload here. So our block fuel today, 15,131. We're going to round that up as always a little bit. The fuelers always tend to overfuel you a little bit, so we'll go with 15,300 as our fuel load for today. And our folks, we'll say, are already loaded. Actually, what we can do, I don't get to do this very much, but let's do this because we can actually do it in here, is we can use the ground services. So let's actually do that. Let's go back and let's reset this to where it was. I think it was 6.4 or something like that. And let's actually use PMDG's ground services today for once. So we can call for the fuel truck and ask them to load 15,300. Request them. And we can also, let's see here. 113 passengers.
For the walk around.
And it shows you the weight, but you still gotta pop it in there. Request, 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 request. Let's have a little bit of fun with this. The one thing that is annoying about the PMDG stuff is it's a lot more manual. Reduce to capacity, that's fine. It's a lot more manual to do the no, we can't board with stairs. Okay, fine, whatever. All right, so this stuff is arriving. So now we've got the PMDG ground services arriving today. They'll load me up. They're refueling. They're gonna start loading. Maybe it's just me. It seems really quiet in my ears, but you guys can tell me. I might turn it up just a little bit here, just a little bit, just so I can kind of hear it, so I know what's happening. So you can see the loaders are all here, the fuel truck's here, we got the baggage trains arriving, we got airplane, we got stairs. It's a little bit weird not having GSX. I like GSX because it's the automation as well. Like you sort of trigger it, and then everything sort of happens. You don't have to do anything with it over and over again. And that's one of the nice things that I really like about it, is that you just sort of trigger it once, and that's the way it happens in the real world. Like you say, hey, we're ready for boarding, and then everything else from that point happens automatically. You don't have to say, hey, load the passengers, hey, load the forward hold, hey, load the aft hold, hey, remove all the equipment. Everybody does these jobs for you. So as a pilot, you're not normally doing these jobs. So that's what I like about GSX. Trigger it once, it all happens automatically for you. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have that option of like, hey, I can manually tweak stuff, but certainly for the realistic airline career here. All right, anywho, let's get this show on the road here. I'm just going to put ground services up here so I can see what's happening. And he wants to unload until he gets to the max load there, which we were apparently above. Fantastic. Anywho, and that's just a randomly assigned PMDG number. That's what's funny. Oh, I get it. I know how to make this work, I think. I'm not even going to mess with it. Anyways, we got the equipment out there. It looks like they're loading stuff. That's good enough for me. All right, so today for our trip to to Seattle, we have the 737-700, Air Act 2307, effective until August 10th, and that's good for today. We're late July. Position initialization. Let's grab our GPS coordinates from page 2 as always and pop them in there. Set IRS positions. Route today, we're going to go from KJAC to KSEA.
Hi,
flight.
the security and safety check are all done. Are we good to start boarding?
For 756. No, 765. Just a second. Go for it.
Thanks.
All right, so she's going for it. They're going to start boarding the airplane. Alaska 765. We're going to depart Jackson Hole. All right, so let's have a look at the weather here in Jackson Hole. We got no ATC online. I'm shocked. I'm really shocked here. We got thunderstorms and light rain, 7 miles. Winds calm. Winds are calm, so we could depart either direction. Let's have a look here. Let's have a look at two things first. Let's have a look at where the weather is, and actually we can pull up the Navigraph charts, and that will let us do that. Let's look at the weather, and let's look at the departure procedures here. So, first of all, let's look at Jackson Hole's charts. And the Alpine 4 is a southbound departure only. Alright, so the Alpine 4 is the only one that goes west, but that's fine. We can get around that. The other thing we want to really kind of look at here is let's look at the weather layer here. Oh, and I can't do it in the sim still. Weather layer doesn't exist yet in the sim. Ah, darn you. Because if the winds are calm, we can choose our direction of departure. Let's see where this thunderstorm is, and let's take off away from the thunderstorm. So that's the last thing I did. It was one of the last things I did. That was like 2 weeks ago, I swear. All right, there we go. So there's our thunderstorm. It's actually mostly to the east. However, I do see also a segment off to the west here. So this departure looks like would take us right through a thunderstorm. By the time we get going, this is one of those decision-making times here, isn't it? The time we get going here, this hopefully would be moved off, and we'd be better to do this departure because the SIDS here. Let's have a look at the SIDS again. Let's overlay them on this chart. So the divided goes off this way. So that's the Alpine departure. That's the divided. I may even have to just sort of wait on this and see what's going to be smarter. Geyser 6 and Teton 3. So it's going to be the Alpine 4 or the divided 1, but I just don't know. I'm going to go with divided 1. I think by the time we get going, this weather will have moved out. That's my guess. Is that this cell right here that's right now affecting the field will have moved off to the east. This one, however, will probably be coming this way by that point in time. Let's just have a look at the animation here. They're actually tracking northeast. Oh, you know what? Actually, in that case, we'll do the southbound Alpine departure because they're kind of going this way. This one will still be in the way. This one looks like we're actually going to do better. Okay. Let's do that. Let's do the southbound departure. It's probably the better option at this point. All right. Okay, so let's do that. Let's do the Alpine 4 off of 19. We're doing the IDA transition. There we go. All right, but sometimes you got to look at these things. Sometimes you got to do your own assessment. You know, dispatchers will make you a flight plan based on what they see at the time they make the flight plan, but oftentimes that flight plan is made hours before you actually get to the airplane. So especially in a dynamic weather situation like thunderstorms and whatnot, you're often better off kind of making your own
I'm back.
choices.
There are no issues on the walk around. Good aeroplane.
Awesome, thank you. All right, direct Pendleton, which is at north by west 118. Yeah, that'll be fine. And then Chins 5 for Seattle right there. So very simple route today. Seattle 3-4 left, ILS 3-4 left. I don't know which transition to do, but we are doing the Chins 3-4 from Pendleton. So we can activate and execute that entire route. And then we can go into our perf initialization page here. So payload here. ZFW is estimated today at 112,679. So we're going to round that up to 112.7. Fuel is already... Nope, fuel's not on board. Why is fuel not on board yet? Did I forget to click start on the fuel? It helps to click start. There. It will be 15.3 by the time we're done. So we'll go ahead and put that in our plan fuel. Reserves today, so FinRes plus alternate 5.1. I thought I changed that. Okay. I did not. I was going to, and then I got distracted by some other stuff. So let's do that. Let's get rid of that today. And let's. I was thinking about changing this, and then I got distracted. All right. So fuel guy, I may have a new fuel order for you here. We're gonna try something different today. No. Did it anyways. Alright, we're going to do something different today, something I don't do too much because I really don't believe in it necessarily, but I think it's to make a fun and interesting discussion point, is no alternate IFR. So no alternate now, that gives us a fuel load of 12.9. So let's go back in there and just tell this guy
here's the fuel slip.
Thanks.
Welcome. Have a nice flight.
Ground services, hopefully he's not fueled too much, but no. 12, we'll call it 13.1. There we go. So we're going to save the airline a bit of money today by not lugging around extra fuel we're probably not going to use. We'll talk about it once we get going, because there's lots of kind of interesting stuff that comes from with no alternate IFR. But for example, the fact that we don't need alternate fuel, so our final reserve is down to 2.1. This is part of how we are lugging around so little extra fuel. And what am I looking for here? Cost index, yeah, cost index. So cost index, we're planned at 20. Maybe we'll go a little faster if we have the opportunity. Flight level 340 is our cruise for today. Average wind, 240 at 53. 240 at 53, and our average, our temperature top of climb minus 45. What did I do? 240 at 53. There we go. Execute all that performance data. And then let's come up with a performance limit here in Jackson Hole. Now this would be one where we probably actually have to use some company data because there's mountains and everything else around here. I'm going to do my best to kind of find a takeoff power setting that works. Runway 19. Wet runway is the most important thing today. Winds 360 at 0. Outside air temperature, where's my METAR? Here it is. 14 degrees and 3025 on the meter. So I just have a little app on my phone that I can use for this. Let's see if we could do a flap 1 departure. Air conditioning on, anti-ice off. And let's do a takeoff weight of 127,700. That's not a half bad takeoff weight. It does give me numbers at takeoff 1. What if I, or at takeoff, what if I do takeoff 1? Can I do it? I could even do takeoff 1. But takeoff 2. Takeoff 2 I can't do, but takeoff 1 we can do. So let's do takeoff 1. And it's giving me a flex temp of 19 degrees right now, and it's 14 degrees. So we can do this. Not a lot of flex on this. But it's already derated to takeoff 1. Flaps 1. And why flaps 1? Well, takeoff distance is a bit of an issue, but what's more of an issue is clearance after departure. Terrain clearance after departure. So we're going to get the acceleration and thrust reduction altitudes down to 1,000 feet here. We are going to definitely assume it's a wet runway. Calm winds. If anything, what you want to do when you have calm winds, I'm not going to do it right now, but if anything, when you do calm wind departures, you often want to do a consider a possible tailwind component. So if it's going to be calm wind and you think maybe the wind's kind of light and variable, might be tail, it might be headwind, take the conservative course of action. Plan a 5 knot tailwind for departure. Even though we'd like to take off with a headwind, what if the worst case scenario happens and while you start rolling down the runway, suddenly it switches to a tailwind? Be ready for that sort of thing. So, all right, we got our takeoff data in there. I think we're all set. This guy's done the flow. Let me just recheck his flow, make sure it's good. Stall test is active now. Oxygen's on. All right, yaw damper's on. Start the APU. Start the APU, please. Or not. Why not do it myself? Alright, he did the test already. Alright, so let's start that APU. While it's starting, we'll just continue scanning. Fuel is done, 13.1. I'll release some vehicles here in a minute. Let's just go through this overhead panel flow here. Alright. Passenger cabin should be in a nice temperature because I asked for an air conditioning cart for today. I often forget that. This guy did not set this, possibly because I didn't have the altitude already set. 34,000. It's auto. I think Ignition on one side. What was the altimeter in Jackson Hole again? Uh, 3025. And you should have already set that anyways. Looks like the pressure might be falling as the storm moves through. 3025. Takeoff speeds V1's 136. V2 136, I should say. Get the flight directors on. And do we have a top altitude on this here? So for the Alpine 4 departure, is there published top altitude? Assigned by ATC. I'm going to go ahead and put 15,000 on there since we have to cross Kinset at about 15,000 anyways. Seems like a reasonable for departure out of here. Seems like a very reasonable altitude. That will give us terrain clearance over everything. Alright, LNAV and VNAV armed. Very good. Alright, let's get the traffic on. Got the altimeter already set. Lights test. Let's test these first while I'm just looking at them. Alright. All the lights seem to be working. Good. We got RTO. Panel lighting looks okay. I might turn this down just a little bit. Looks like it's a little bit too bright. GPW switches are all guarded. Brake levers stowed. Park and brake. Get that on there. Flaps are 0. Idle. Stab trims are normal. Everything's cut off. You already tested the fire alarm systems. 22.8 for VATSIM Unicom. We'll set 2,000 on the transponder, and then I think we're ready to go. All right. Pre-flight checklist.
Pre-flight checklist. Oxygen.
Tested 100%. Tested 100%. Tested 100%. Tested 100%.
Tested 100%. Navigation transfer and display switches. Normal, auto. Window heat. On. Pressurization mode selector. Auto. Flight instruments.
Heading 098. Altimeter
Hi guys, here's the load sheet
3025.
for you.
Heading 098. Altimeter 3025. Parking brake.
Set.
Engine start levers.
Cut off.
Pre-flight checklist completed.
Thank you.
No problem. Have a safe flight.
Alright, before we do the briefing, we're just going to start releasing some of this ground service stuff here. So, FS actions, ground services. Alright, so we can release the ground power. Those guys can pull that. We're running on the APU now. You can release the air conditioning unit because we're also running on the APU. Fuel truck, you can release that. And we'll release stairs at 2L. And we'll release the aft loader. So now some stuff's going to happen here. Some people are going to pull away. And in the meantime, are you ready for the departure briefing?
Go ahead.
Alright, so for today's departure, we are doing the Alpine 4 departure out of Jackson Hole. First of all, departure or taxi out of Jackson Hole. We're going to depart 19, so it's going to be straightforward taxi. We're going to push back to tail to the south and taxi Alpha to the threshold. There's no hotspots or otherwise real hazards along the way here. The departure again today is the Alpine 4 departure out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. 10-3. Let's see here. Climb on heading 200. Let's just verify this all in the box here as we read it. Climb on heading 200 to intercept the Jackson Hole, the Jackson 192 radial, outbound to the Kickney intersection, cross Kickney at or above 15,000, then proceed on assigned transition/route. Expect further clearance to final altitude 10 minutes after departure. Top altitude assigned by ATC. We selected 15,000. That clears all the terrain around here. The airport does have some 12,000, even 14,000, almost 15,000 terrain off to the northwest there. So We are taking off away from that high terrain, and we're trying to avoid the storms as well. If we need to pass in Kickney, we can. We'll be above the MSA. If we're above 15,000, we can defer it at that point around any weather. Let's see here. Yeah, so terrain is obviously a huge issue. As long as we follow the departure procedure, the SID, then that should be no problem. If we have an engine failure, I don't even know what an engine failure procedure would look like here. I'd imagine you probably have to turn to the south, but I imagine the airlines would have customized engine failure procedures here because of the high terrain. They might also have to do a teardrop and climb back out over the Jackson VOR. So I think what we're going to do as a backup plan here, just in case we're to lose the navigation on departure somehow, we need to have that radial tuned in and ready to go. So 115.4, 115.4, it's the 192 radial. So it looks like it's a slight right turn after departure, and then intercept that radial. So 115.4, and it's the 192 radial. So let's just get that tuned in so it's ready to go. Heaven forbid we lose the GPS on departure. We can still navigate safely, at least out of this valley, and then figure out what we're going to do after that. Both tuned to the same thing. So again, redundancy. I want lots of redundancy for this departure because terrain is a major issue. As long as we reach Kickney at 15,000, we should be good. The highest terrain is off to the northwest of the airport. So the direction we're taking off, it is over a 10,000 foot hill. But once we've turned westbound, actually, it gets a little bit lower pretty quick. So we just got to make it over this hill. It will probably be IMC'd over for departure here by the looks of this thunderstorm. So we probably will not see the mountains as we go over it. Luckily, we saw them on the way in. Let's see here. Weather, obviously, that's also an issue there with the thunderstorm currently passing over. Let's go back to this again here, just because it's got a view here, and let's just make sure that this is the most up-to-date radar we've got now here. So 1340. I can just drag it to the end there. Yeah, so it looks like this is probably the safest bet, is actually the southbound departure. We may have to delay slightly for the thunderstorm to pass, and then as that one passes off to the northeast, this one will also pass off our route, be stuck here, then we can go around to the south. And like I said, once we get past Kickney at 15,000, we can divert around the weather as we need to. So that's the plan right now. Operational, no MELs on the aircraft, and no TAMs. I haven't even thought about no TAMs. Oh boy. Man, oh man. Okay, let's pull up the sim brief panel one more time. Let's just have a quick look. Hopefully there's not too many no TAMs for Jackson Hole here. Alright, so automated weather broadcast is not available. Great. All taxiways all wet. GA wet. Even commercial wet. Yeah. Obstruction stacks, paragliders, VOR TME not monitored. Great. Work in progress on the GA ramp. 19 conditions 555. That's fine. We've already compensated for that with our takeoff calculations for wet runway. Unserviceable medium intensity lights. SID. Alpine 4 departure. Idaho Falls transition. NA. Except for aircraft equipped with suitable RNAV systems, the Idaho VOR is out of service. Alright. Hopefully so. Hopefully our GPS does not fail us. Otherwise we'll have to request some assistance from ATC. And that's basically it. Given the weather here, if there was a disaster after takeoff, I would not bet on getting back into this airport. So, quick thought, takeoff alternates, because you probably, with a thunderstorm overhead the field, you're probably not going to make it back in. So, our best bet...
Hey guys, all packs are on board. Are we clear to close?
If we have some sort of a major disaster after departure, is to head down to Salt Lake City, which I believe this is Salt Lake City, right? Yeah, that's Salt Lake City right there. It's not that far. Would probably be our safest bet. Southwest towards Mild City and over to Salt Lake City is probably the safest bet for emergency services. Even with a fire on board the aircraft, I really don't want to land back here in a thunderstorm. So even Malad City, just trying to look at other alternatives here. Pocatello Regional is pretty close as well. We could even go to Pocatello if we had an absolute disaster, or even Idaho Falls actually. Idaho Falls would probably be an airport we could hopefully get into. Let's just have a look at that weather map again. Make sure that we are happy with this assessment. Yeah, actually over Pocatello, Idaho Falls. So that's like our first engine fire or any kind of fire diversion point. We go to Idaho Falls. Anything that's not an engine fire, we'll pretty much divert to Salt Lake City. Thanks, it'll be a short taxi.
Thanks. Let me know if you need anything.
Any questions?
No question.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome on
All right.
our flight today. This is the lead
Let's
flight
do a few more things here to get this thing
Please
up and
direct
running
your
here.
attention to the cabin crew for
Okay,
important
so he's pulled the
safety
chocks.
information.
Good.
There is an instruction card in your seat pocket that
And one thing I'm going to have to do here is
equipment
give
on
myself
this
a manual
aircraft.
pushback.
Regulations require compliance with this information as well as all crew instructions.
And how do I do that again? Oh, pushback, right.
Signs and post-it placards. Fasten your seatbelt by
All right.
inserting the metal tip into the buckle. Tighten by pulling on the belt.
Tug on here.
Release your seatbelt to lift the metal flap on the buckle. It is our policy that you keep your seatbelt fastened at all times while seated. Doors are clearly marked with exit
Self-drive.
instructions for door operation. Each door is equipped with a
Before start checklist.
The 4-star checklist. Flight deck door, closed and locked. MCP.
Speed 136, heading 098, altitude 15,000.
Cabin is pressurized. If there is a loss of cabin pressure, a panel
Altitude
below the
15,000.
cockpit maps will appear.
Takeoff speeds.
Seated with your seatbelt fastened and pull a map toward you to start the slow
V1 123, VR 132, V2 136.
CDU pre-flight.
Completed.
Rudder and aileron trim.
Checked. Free and zero.
Taxi and takeoff briefing.
Completed.
Anti-collision light on. Before start checklist complete.
All right. And just do this here. Now the one thing we need to do as well is just update our ZFW. So let's just pull up the actual weight that's in the airplane now. Oops, not that one. This one. Payload. The actual ZFW is 117.5. Little heavier than planned. So we have to verify those takeoff speeds. 126, 135, 138. All right. Okay, we got all those in there. It's all ready to go. We got the tug. I'm going to do the manual pushback today. We should have the tug. I thought I put the tug on there. There's the tug. All right, ramp to the flight deck. You're cleared for pushback. Tail to the south. We'll delay the engine start until you advise. All right. And one thing I think I have to do for this to work. Yeah, we got the hydraulics on. I don't know how to get a tug driving view here, really. Best, maybe I could do this. Close enough. Pretending like we're in the tug itself here. Trouble is my. How do I get him to move? I thought I got him to move. Oh, it doesn't. If I'm in drone view does not let me move. Alright, so here we go. Fortunately, it's not a very realistic tug driving view, and I wish there was a better way to do this, but I wonder if there might be. Let's just check one more time here. See if there is like a. Probably not. Oh, that was not bad, actually. Alright, let's do that one. In the P3D version, there was actually a camera that was defined at the tug, so you could actually see the view from in the tug and try to steer the aircraft onto the line correctly from the tug. Nope. Wrong way. Very long reaction time for this tug here too. This is very awkward to try and turn this. Very awkward. And I used to push airplanes around for a living, so I used to be really good at this, but this is a very awkward perspective, and there's a real lag to this here, even when I stop turning the tug here. It does not stop the, or when I stop turning my my control column, there's a real lag. Wow, this is a horrible pushback. See if I can get it on the line at least. Redeem myself a little bit here. It's not the easiest thing to push back in an airplane. This is a weird perspective too. Like I said, there's a big lag going on here too, which is also making it really interesting. Oh, don't overdo it. Okay, don't overdo it, buddy. Almost. Oh my god. What are you doing? You're killing me here. You're killing me here. It's an interesting animation anyways. I gotta stop doing like such an oversteer. There, I can just straighten it out now. The crowd should be on the line. I haven't actually steered with the tug in a while. Alright, pretty close to the center line here. I think that's very reasonable. Took me a lot longer, a lot further than I should have. I should have been able to really push straight back and stop a lot sooner, but that's actually not bad. That's not bad, all things considered. Alright. Set the parking brake, you guys are clear to disconnect the tug. Alright. Start sequence is 2, then 1.
Check.
Start engine 2.
Starting engine 2.
That was a bit awkward, but kind of fun at the same time. Not something I would normally be doing as a pilot. Steering
Oil
the tug
pressure.
as well. But that's okay. It's kind of a neat little adventure, so it's a little side adventure there in my pilot's life career here. Alright, there we go. There we go, we got some fuel flowing, looking good. And I think we left more or less on time. My goal was to leave at 10 after, and that was pretty close to on time. I think we spent quite a bit of time chatting. More time than I expected with a couple of things there, but yeah. Definitely fun though. Not having GSX, I'm so used to GSX. Not having GSX has had to make me work a little bit harder than I used to. Oh, is it me or did he get really loud there? Like super loud. Why is he so loud? Okay, I think I see what happened. Somehow I switched him to the speakers instead of the headset, so you guys probably didn't hear him, I think. Yeah. Alright, let me just check this again here. Start engine 1.
Starting engine 1.
There. Yeah, somehow I probably pressed the button by accident, but I switched him to
Oil pressure.
I switched him to speakers, which I could still hear, but then you guys couldn't hear. Or was it on speakers and I switched to headphones? Either way. I think it was on speakers, I switched to headphones. You guys couldn't hear the headphones, but you can hear the speakers. Alright, there's 25%. Get the fuel flowing. Valves are opening. Fuel is flowing. You can hear the engine starting to turn. Everything's coming up Everything's coming up Alaskan. I haven't even looked at VATSIM to see what's happening in terms of just is there anybody else nearby. So we'll just while this finishes starting up here, we're going to get our VATSIM open here on the other screen. Just have
Start a
quick...
cutout.
All right. Everything should be stable.
Number 1 stable.
Nice. Yeah, we're the only ones within like 200 miles of this airport right now on the VATSIM network. So I will make the appropriate calls, but the fact that I didn't make a call for pushback did not injure anybody. Flaps 1. Flaps 1. Flight control check.
Ready.
Full left. Full right. Center. Full up. Full down. Center. Full left. Full right. Center. Flight control check complete. Before taxi checklist.
B4 taxi checklist. Generators on. Probate on. Anti-ice off. Isolation valve auto. Engine star switches. Continuous. Recall.
Checked.
Checked. Auto brake. RTO. Engine start levers.
Idle detent.
Flight controls.
Checked.
Ground equipment.
Clear.
Clear. B4 taxi checklist complete.
Alright, so we do have one message here. Verify takeoff speeds. I think I did, but I don't think I cleared the message. Actually, looks like the speeds have dropped ever so slightly. Not sure if it's due to drop.
Set.
Altimeter. Clear left.
Okay. Cabin crew, take your seats. Clear on the approach.
Alright, here we go. And just looking at this here,
The cabin is still not secure. Clear right.
we're actually not going yet. You seem to think we're at the runway. We're just starting taxiing. Alright, let's get the taxi light on. Jackson Hole traffic. Alaska 765. Correction, 565. What are we, 765? 765, yeah. Let's try that again. Jackson Hole traffic, Alaska 765 is at the terminal. We're taxiing Alpha for departure runway 19 on the Alpine departure westbound. So just looking at the weather out here as we start to taxi out, the rain has stopped. It's not raining at the moment. It does look like the worst of the thunderstorm is off to the north of the field. It looks like it's actually kind of fairly open off to the south there. So as we come around in the holding bay, we'll have another look to the south, but it looks like it's going to work out actually quite well for our departure. It looks like the weather has kind of passed off to the northeast here, so that will work out well for our departure. Don't want to hit any wind shears. We're trying to make it over these mountains. I'm going to wait too long on stream, but as a pilot, that's always an option you have, is waiting, especially for departure. You can always wait for departure. If you don't like the weather in the direction you're departing, you can ask for a different runway. If there's only one other runway available, it's not really feasible, you can always wait out the weather. You have other issues to worry about sometimes, scheduling a duty day and other stuff like that, but it's never worth rushing through bad weather just to try and make up your duty day or anything like that. Much better off just waiting a few extra minutes on the ground. And I've said that before, and I've had those days where I've looked at the weather and it's like I can see myself writing my own accident report right now as we go here. Like, you just have those days where the weather is just it's not great, it's not terrible, it's not great, and then but you can read your own Mayday episode as it's happening. It's like, well, they felt pressure to go because of the schedule, and they knew they had to get to said airport before dark, and blah blah blah. And it's the second you start feeling like I'm writing my own action report, it's time to slow down and just say, hey, can I just take a second here and just do something different? Alright, so we got a nice big holding bay up here at the threshold runway 19. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn into the holding bay, and then we're going to face the runway so that we can kind of look out the left side and have a look at the weather off the departure end of the runway. The other thing that you can do as a pilot as well is you can look at the weather radar when you're on the runway, and the towers will usually let you do that without too much issue. As long as it's obviously not interfering with anybody arriving, but they will let you taxi onto the runway, turn on the weather radar, scan up and down, have a look at the weather off the departure end, and decide if you want to depart or not. The air traffic controllers at the end of the day are there to help accommodate the flights, get the flights conducted as safely as possible, and that will include, of course, giving them advice about the weather and potentially, and trying to help them navigate around the weather. The controllers are not there to put you through the weather. They're there to help you try and find options to get around the weather as well. All right, so we're gonna go out to the end of the holding bay here. Just gonna, like I said, turn 9 degrees to the left so that we can see off the departure end of our runway here out the window and have a good solid look at it. Decide if it's suitable for departure yet. It's definitely off to the west. That mountain does not look particularly happy or pleasant. And if I could do it, if the sim would let me do it, I would love to turn onto the runway and turn the weather radar on, but it's not an option in this sim. Alright, so just looking off the departure into the runway there, that frankly looks beautiful. I think we're good to go. Before takeoff checklist.
Before takeoff checklist. Flaps.
Flaps 1, green light.
Stabilizer trim.
.6 units set.
Before takeoff checklist complete.
Runway entry procedure.
Okay. Cabin crew, take your seats. Clear on the approach. The cabin is still not secure.
Okay, give them a call, see what's going on, because sometimes they forget to call. That's been long enough, though, for the taxi out. They should be secure by now. And the fact we did the PA should make them really want to call quickly and find out, hey, tell us quickly if it's secure. So we're going to say, tell the FO, call the back, see if they're secure. Calls back and they say, yep, sorry, we just forgot to call, we are secure. Perfect. We're good to go. And let's just have a look and make sure this flight knows tracking is working here, but it does see that we're in the taxi out phase. It does show us taxiing, so the tracking is working. Takeoff.
Thrust set.
N1, Toga.
Checked. $80 knots.
Roger.
Checked. V1. Rotate. Bug up is set. Oh, the right.
Gear up.
Gear up. Gear up.
LNAV.
Checked. 400 feet.
VNAV speed.
Checked. Bug up is set.
Select Command A.
Autopilot on.
Flaps.
Speed check.
Flaps up.
Speed check. Flaps up set.
Ooh, nice rainbow out there. All right, so we're putting in some speed intervention here,
Checked.
10 knots to
Roger.
maintain our climb rate. I can't remember if the voice is on or not. Yeah, the end of that runway came up pretty quickly. I think there was an error on the V-speed
10,000.
calculations there.
Happy to release the cabin.
Go for it.
Okay.
I'll give it a couple more knots, but I'm really, until we clear this terrain, I really want to
electronic devices may now be used
kind of keep
with
the
exception of
speed
TVs,
back.
radios, two-way transmitters, or any other device in a transmit mode, as these devices may interfere
See
with
that
aircraft
mountain up ahead of
communication
us there.
navigation systems.
I want to keep this climb rate going, so I'd rather keep the speed a little low, keep the climb rate going initially. Set flight level 340.
Flight level 340 set.
I miss the old days in FSX and P3D where you'd actually see him winding it up. It just instantly changes now. I guess that has to do with the new API. It's just a little disappointing though. Alright. So we got about 16 miles to reach 15,000 feet. I think we're going to be okay here. But if you ever had an engine failure here, you would be sitting there struggling to try and gain some altitude and find a way out of this valley. Alright. There's 14 for 15,000. How are we doing on the TAT here? Plus 12 still. So still good on the TAT. Looks like we've avoided the worst of the weather. I'm gonna, yeah, you keep the train up on your side. I'm going to go to weather radar on my side because I want to see what's going on up here. Alright, there's 15,000, so we'll go ahead and turn off speed intervention, let it accelerate to its planned cruise, or planned climb speed here of 296, 295, that's fine. We have cleared all the terrain around here at 15,000 feet. But it was a little bit nerve-wracking. That takeoff roll, I used every inch of the runway. At V1, if we had rejected at V1, I don't think, or even 3 knots prior to V1, I don't think we would have stopped on that runway. I think there was an error in the V1 calculation there, or maybe we should have done takeoff 1. And I was debating about that one. It said we could do it. I was debating that. I was like, eh. The fact that it's like climb instead of climb 1 made me happy that like after takeoff it was going to use a powerful enough setting to keep us climbing. But anyways. Yeah, there are nerve-wracking departures sometimes in the airline business, and that was definitely a little bit nerve-wracking. It's not a long runway. It's high altitude too. It's like 6,400 feet, so you're already at like a high altitude. Your performance is not that great to begin with. And I've noticed that there's a few places where I've noticed that. Denver was probably the one that was most prominent that I've noticed that, where it feels like you're rolling down the runway at a ridiculous speed before you reach takeoff, and it also feels like it takes forever to get to takeoff speed. And because the air is thin, the engines generate less power. The wings generate less lift, so you need to reach a higher speed. And because the lower overall ambient air pressure, anyways, your indicated speed is also not accurate. Your indicated speed is actually lower than your true airspeed, so it seems to take forever to reach V1, which it's like 130 or 140 knots or whatever. But in reality, because of the fact you're 6,000, 5,000 feet above sea level, 140 knots indicated is more like 175 knots true. Transition set standard.
Standard set. Passing flight level 184.
After takeoff checklist.
After takeoff checklist. Engine bleeds. On. Packs. Auto. Landing gear. Up and off. Flaps. Up. No lights. After takeoff checklist complete. Now. Happy to release the cabin crew?
Go for it.
Okay.
Keep the passenger seated for a little bit longer here. Set engine anti-ice on.
Engine anti-ice is on.
So we're below plus 10 degrees on the TAT, still flying through the cloud here. We should be mostly to the south of this thunderstorm here. This reminds me too of the fact I keep seeing this rainbow here reminds me that there's another new feature out there. It's a payware feature, but if you want it, you can actually get the Northern Lights in Microsoft Flight Simulator now. There's a company that put out the Northern Lights. I think it's like $8 or something like that. You can have a pretty accurate simulation of the Northern Lights. So I thought that was a neat one. It's something you get to enjoy oftentimes in the flight deck on those night flights. Only seen it a couple times so far in the last year or so, but you do those late night flights, you do the red eyes or whatever, you're just flying all night long. There's a good chance at some point you're going to see the Northern Lights. All right, looking pretty good here. We're kind of sailing along. We're just above the clouds. I don't see too much of a storm in front of us. It looks like it's all kind of passed to the north of our route as expected, which is great. Going to keep the NTIs on for just a little bit longer here, just so we kind of clear the last of this kind of cloud deck here. But overall, that was a pretty successful departure. A little bit concerning with the runway light there. That was probably the biggest concern right there. And of course, waiting for something to happen. Of course, nothing's actually going to happen because I haven't set anything up to happen. And I meant to do this actually. I saw the option menu and I totally forgot to do it. So all systems, we are on service-based failures, but we are also going to put random failures on there. Yeah, we're not going to put too many on there right now because there's not too many people watching, but we are going to put 5 on there. We'll see if that makes anything happen between now and Seattle. Certainly if something had happened on the way out of Jackson Hole, that would have been interesting. That would have been interesting. All right, let's get stations up there. Gives us something to look at. There we go. There's Idaho Falls up ahead. Perfect. We are doing okay here. Alright, and as we climb up to our cruising altitude 34,000, let's just have a quick little summary look here. So, landing in Seattle 16:02, which is an hour, just under an hour and a half from now. That's great. And yeah, hopefully the weather stays nice because we have got no alternate IFR, which means that we do not have a whole lot of extra fuel in the airplane. So I decided to throw this out there as like, hey, here's something you need that just to sort of talk about and deal with. And what I really should have been dealing with as well, given the thunderstorms in Jackson Hole, was we should have first of all had a takeoff alternate. The whole idea of a takeoff alternate is that if you cannot get back into the airport you just left from for whatever reason, and something happens immediately upon departure, so if you lose an engine on departure, the airplane catches fire, whatever, something bad happens right after departure, you're not getting back into this airport, where are you going to go? What are the viable options? So the normal reason you need a takeoff alternate usually is low visibility. So if you have fog or otherwise low visibility at your departure point to the point where you cannot get in again on an approach, then you're going to need takeoff alternate. So there's kind of 2 rules to look at. The first is, of course, the standard half mile. So most of the time you need a standard half mile for departure. Anything less than that, and you're going to need a takeoff alternate. But the flip side of it as well is look at the approaches at the airport. If the ceiling is low and the minimums are high, it might be 3/4 of a mile, but if the ceiling's 200 feet and the only approaches into this airport require 400 or 500 feet, there's a good chance you're not getting back in, regardless of the visibility. So that's the other option. Is look at this. That's the other side of it. Is look at the ceiling as well. Look at the weather, the minimums, and not just the lowest minimums, but look at the minimums for the runway that you would probably use. If there's a strong tailwind on the ILS, and there's only an RNAV to 500 feet on the other end, you can't use the ILS minimums. If you've got a 20-knot tailwind and you can't land with a 20-knot tailwind in your airplane, then you've got to look at those higher minimums. So those are the reasons you'll need a takeoff alternate. Thunderstorms would be a good reason. The nice thing about thunderstorms is usually they pass, unless there's a big line or something like that. Usually thunderstorms is not a reason why you would necessarily need a takeoff alternate. Certainly not legally and on paper, but from a practical real-world perspective, you'll have a takeoff alternate like we did just now, that exercise before we departed. We looked around, what are the possible airports nearby? What I really should have done, of course, is I should have also looked at the weather at the various nearby airports to make sure that they were suitable for our operation. But let's see if I can find, I should have looked at the weather forecast for even Idaho Falls. Open airport, show me the weather. Show me the TAF. Just to look at it, it would have been fine. Yeah, it's basically usually standard alternate minimums that you would use for a destination alternate also apply to a takeoff alternate. The one big restriction usually with a takeoff alternate is there is a time limitation. They generally have to be within 60 minutes of single-engine cruise speed of your departure point. So I have no doubt that Idaho Falls is about a 15-20 minute cruise. But the way most airlines will do it is most airlines will simply set a distance. They'll say this is the standard still air cruise distance we can expect to accomplish in 1 hour on a single engine for X aircraft, and that'll be it. So rather than try and look at, well, the winds are doing this today, but what if they don't do this? What if they're a little stronger, a little weaker? They to keep the math simple and try and keep the bureaucracy a little bit simpler. There will simply be a number in the manual. There'll be a distance. So 67 miles on one aircraft I fly. On one aircraft I flew 367 miles. Another one was 267 miles. But whatever distance the airline decides, draw a circle around your departure point, and that is your takeoff alternate has to be within that distance. And the idea is, of course, if you have an engine fire or something really bad happen right after departure, you need somewhere to go reasonably quick. And it's actually an hour, so it's a long way anyways. But 300 miles is a long way to go if you've lost an engine. But that's the sort of thing you're looking for, is what is around me within a reasonable distance. For the destination alternate, there's no technical legal limit. You can have a destination alternate that is 4.5 hours away from your destination if you really want to, and you can carry the fuel. In a lot of cases, that won't be very feasible, but there's no limitation like that. With takeoff alternates, you have to be usually within an hour of your departure point. So Idaho Falls would have been very feasible. Even Salt Lake City, a little further, but I think definitely within that 1 hour range. The only trouble with Salt Lake City, of course, is that if you have something like an engine fire or a cabin fire, an engine fire or a cabin fire, you don't want to be half an hour. You want to be like, what's the fastest thing that'll get me on the ground? And with a thunderstorm in Jackson Hole, I wasn't going to go back to Jackson Hole, but Idaho Falls was probably about 15 minutes away. Even that would have been pushing it. The average survival time with a fire on board an aircraft is 12 minutes in the air. That's the average industry-wide. Some of the aircraft have lasted longer, but most of the time it's pretty short. So even Idaho Falls would have been a stretch. All right, there's 34,000. All right, and we are level. So that was that's the sort of thing you got to think about. You just want to just consider those possibilities and have plans in the back of your mind. The best thing you can do is have plans in the back of your mind so that when the unforeseen bad circumstances happen, you're ready for it. So Uncle Wiki, that's a great question. And Hayden UK, hey, didn't mean to ignore you. I was just trying to finish my train of thought there.
Autopilot off.
Oh, crying out loud! I moved the trim wheel ever so slightly because I scratched my leg. And
Autopilot on.
Autopilot on. Thank you. So Uncle Wiki said, when should an alternate destination get programmed into the FMC? Again, that's a really good question, and different airlines will have different policies. So some airlines will require it every single time you go flying. The alternate flight plan should be in the FMC. I'm not even sure if the Boeing FMC supports the alternate, does it? I'm not even 100% sure it supports the alternate being in there. Oh, yeah, there it does. Alternate destination. So we don't have an alternate today, but I'm just going to put this down just for example. But all it's really doing in this case is not giving you routing. So Airbus, you can program in the whole alternate route as well. I don't think Boeing will let you do it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, I hate to use the word worthwhile risk mitigation, but risk mitigation. So, you have an alternate filed. It's sky clear, beautiful day at your destination. There's 3 runways with ILSs at your destination. It's a beautiful sky clear day. The odds of you not being able to land at that destination are pretty slim. Slim to pretty much almost nil. Is it worth your effort to program in that alternate? Probably not. You could. There's nothing that says you can't. But is it even worth the effort of doing it if you can say with like about 98% certainty that we're going to land at this airport? There is almost no circumstance I can foresee where we don't land somewhere at the destination airport. But the other day I did actually program in the beginning of an alternate route. We were doing keep going to the East Coast, and every time I seem to go to the East Coast, the last month or so, it's just always been right down to Cat 1 minimums at the very least. So the other day I was with a new captain, and new captains at most airlines usually are restricted from doing low visibility approaches. They can do Cat 1 ILSs, but in general, autoland approaches, Cat 2 and Cat 3 approaches are usually not allowed until a captain has a certain amount of experience at the airline on the type of aircraft. So usually it's I think 300 hours of turbine time and 100 hours of PIC time on that particular aircraft. And until you've flown that first 100 hours as a captain, you're not going to be allowed to do any autoland. So I keep on going with these new captains out to the East Coast, and they keep on not being able to do the autoland approaches because they haven't got these hours yet. So yeah, it happened to us just last week where we went out to the East Coast, and when we were on our way in there, the visibility was up and down. It was 1/8 of a mile, then it's 3/4 of a mile, then it's back down to 1/8 of a mile. So when we were setting up for the approach, the visibility was back. The visibility was up, but the ceiling was down. And I put in the first like 3 waypoints of the alternate flight plan into the FMS because I thought there's a reasonable chance that we might need this. It's a 4-day sequence and it's go home day, no alternate destination. We are going home. Sky Diva, I think I get the feeling like you're a pilot. I get the feeling like you know the deal. It's leg home power. It's always cost index 100 on the leg home. But yeah, so there's nothing that says you can't program the alternate in on a VFR day. But and if you're going to an airport where there's only a single runway, a single approach, okay, maybe there's some validity to doing it. So there could be an airplane that becomes disabled in the middle of the one runway at the airport, and okay, now we have a problem. Now we don't have anywhere to land. Now we've got to go to our alternate. So it's not just weather that may one day trigger you to go to the alternate. It could be a disabled aircraft on your landing runway. Or any number of things. No way, I'm too pretty to be locked behind that door. All right, are you flight attendant then? You're stuck in the cabin with the passengers. I don't look upon it as being locked in so much as locking everybody else out. Yeah, so. If there's a chance you think you might need it, this is one of those cases where just having the plans ahead of time. I've done some recent flights where we did I've done some recent sim sessions where I did seat support for people who were undergoing the upgrades from first officer to captain, and sitting there going through the command scenarios with them. And really, I'm just there to fill the seat. I'm there to be the dumb first officer who doesn't know too much, but is there to fly the airplane, do the role, but not do the thinking. The captain's got to do the thinking. But that's one of the big things they stress is have multiple plans, be ready. You don't show up at the airport, for your flight, and then that's when you start kind of looking through stuff. Captains will start looking through stuff usually the day before they go flying. They'll start rereading if it's a place they haven't been to for a while, they'll start rereading the notes for that airport. They'll start looking at the weather a day out. It would be a disservice to the public. There's a reason why I'm locked up in that room. Nobody wants to see my smiling face too much. Yeah, like captains will start looking at stuff and start thinking about, what are the possibilities, what are the alternatives. They'll look at the aircraft that they're scheduled to fly and say, hey, what are the unserviceabilities on this aircraft? What are the potential implications of it? What are the potential implications of the weather? What's the length of our duty day? Are we gonna have issues finishing the duty day on time? Is it going to be low visibility at our destination? Like, am I qualified to do that low visibility approach? Should I maybe call cruise kit and say, hey, you may want to think about switching me for somebody else because I can't get into I can't get in on a Cat 2 or a Cat 3 at the destination, and it's supposed to be foggy all morning. So captains will start looking at stuff usually at least the day before. They do a flight, start reviewing stuff, start sort of putting themselves in the mindset. So when they show up at the airport, they start looking at the flight plan. They've already looked at some of these scenarios, and then they've already made plans. And that's the key: is when something looks like it might happen, have a plan. Even when you don't think something's going to happen, be ready for those bad situations. The one that we keep doing, and I absolutely love this scenario, is it's a short flight. It's a very short flight. It's not planned with much extra fuel. The alternate's a bit far away, but it's not planned with a whole lot of extra fuel above and beyond what they need to get to the alternate. You go to the destination, you do the approach, you do the missed approach, and then in the go-around, the gear does not retract. And in fact, the hydraulic system explodes. So you lose the hydraulics, the gear does not retract, and now all of a sudden, you're doing a go-around with the gear still hanging out, and now you're trying to figure out where you're going to go. You couldn't get in because of the weather at your destination, so now what do you do as a captain? Do you go to Do you go back and try your destination again and just go lower than minimums and just try to get in? Do you divert to the alternate? Because right now, if you divert to the alternate right now with the gear hanging out and the extra drag, it's almost 2.5. It's more than 2.5 times the normal drag of the airplane. You're not going to really have enough fuel to get there. You'll get there and you'll be huffing fumes by the time you get there. Do you go back to your origin, which is pretty close, but it's hard IMC. It's Category 3, IMC, but they do have good services. The airplane, because the hydraulic system lost, now you can't do Cat 3 dual. You got to do Cat 3 single. The fail passive Cat 3, with slightly higher minimums, would you go and do that anyways? And so none of the scenarios is a great scenario. They all are kind of like iffy scenarios, and it's as much just about making a decision. And the guys that I've seen, and I've seen this scenario run a bunch of times, the guys that I've seen that do really well have already pretty much made up their mind. As soon as disaster hits, they know what their alternatives are, and they go for the alternatives. They don't spend a whole lot of time in the decision making. It's not that you don't want to make the decision. You don't want to spend time in decision making, but the smart thing that they did was they made the decision before the disaster happened. They were looking at the alternatives. They're looking at the weather. They're saying, okay, there's really not a lot of great outs here, and this is like my real Hail Mary. Like, if I really am in a disastrous emergency situation, what's going to get me on the ground safely with the greatest chance of success? And once you have an emergency, like, a lot of the rules can go out the window. Yes, you're not supposed to, the minimums are supposed to be this on the approach, but at the end of the day, if you think the airplane can do it, the captain's given a lot of latitude to bend the rules in an emergency to ensure the safe conclusion of the flight. So it's as much about that. The people that I've seen that have struggled are the people who were not really thinking of the possibilities, not really thinking of the outlying situations that might occur, and not being ready for that. And then when a bad thing did happen, when the scenario did happen, and it really is a pretty shocking scenario for the first couple seconds when it happens. A lot of bells and alarms go off, and you got to kind of evaluate the situation quickly and come up to a conclusion. And this is why this is one of those numbers that sticks in the back of your brain when you're flying in this aircraft is the gear drag. If the gear does not retract, I guarantee you every pilot that flies this airplane knows that number off by heart, exactly what the multiple is for the fuel consumption. And it's because it's a critical one to know, so you can make a quick guess and say, okay, what do I have time to do? What are my options? Because your range was this. Your range was an hour and a half. I can't get this on the screen here, but your range was an hour and a half, and all of a sudden the gear doesn't come up, and your range shrinks to this. So what's within this circle of operation here that is reasonable, that is feasible, that is safe, that I'll be able to get the flight done? So really need to kind of watch people deal with it. I see some people struggle with it, and it's not necessarily that these people will make bad captains, but they might need more time to sort of train themselves to make decisions. Sometimes you got to make a quick decision. It's best to make the decision with as much information as possible, but sometimes in aviation you have to make a snap decision, and you have to be ready for those snap decisions when the time comes. That's where the really good captains kind of really start to shine, is making those snap decisions when the time comes. So today we're doing something different, which I haven't done too much, which is no alternate IFR. It's not something I really believe in personally as a pilot. I think it's a bad idea. And for this exact reason of what I've been talking about for the last 10, 15 minutes here, is just you should always have an out. You should always have a place you can go. And anytime I've been asked to do no alternate IFR, I've asked to carry enough extra fuel to get to the alternate anyways. So why not just hold an alternate? There's certain airports people fly to and they say, oh, well, you'll always make it into that airport. I would almost always say yes, but never say anything is 100% definite. And the case that comes to mind that is sort of just a weird, it's just sort of a weird one-off, but it happened, was the power failure that happened in Atlanta, it was like 2-3 years ago, but knocked the whole airport offline. So even though you could technically go and land there, I think the tower was running on a backup generator. No jet bridges were operating, so you couldn't offload your passengers. So you couldn't get fuel. The whole place turned into disaster. So Atlanta, 5 parallel runways. Like, the odds of you not being able to land on a runway there are pretty slim. But it's not to say that there aren't other weird black swan events that could happen that could just completely throw your plan out the window. So always have enough fuel that's my opinion. Always have enough fuel to go to an alternate. But today I opted not to. So we literally have no alternate. We have no alternate fuel. However, once you start doing no alternate IFR, where's my fuel planning here? It's all front page 1 here on this, isn't it? Yeah, there it is. Yeah. I used to look at different flight plans now. You know, the amount of fuel we need, like our alternate originally was supposed to be Portland, which was like another 2,500, almost 3,000 pounds worth of fuel. We save a lot of money by not carrying around this extra fuel. However, we did have to put in quite a bit of extra, almost not quite enough extra to get all the way to Portland, but there's a number of rules that come into play when you start doing no alternate IFR. So it's a whole separate set of rules that you have to watch out for. The first is that if you don't have an alternate, the first rule is you have to have enough fuel to do a second approach at your destination without going into your final reserve fuel. So that's part of what I did here with the extra. So most airlines will usually set a standard, and it's usually around 12 minutes. So 12 minutes is enough time to do a go around, come back, circle around, and do another approach and land at your destination airport. So no alternate IFR second approach. You always need to have enough fuel for that. So 12 minutes. So that's what I did here. So I did 12 minutes, plus I did just a normal kind of 10 minutes of contingency fuel, ATC or weather, whatever might happen, extra fuel. So I gave myself 10 extra minutes above the minimum. But yeah, 12 minutes of this was actually a legally required second approach at your alternate. It's still not enough fuel to get to Portland, but it gave us something. So if we do end up doing a go around because somebody doesn't get off the runway fast enough, or their vehicle dries out on the runway, and it could happen, there's definitely reasons to go around could happen, and come back and land again. We've got this 12 minutes of extra fuel to kind of cover that without going into our final reserve. The other big there's a number of rules, but the other big rules when it comes to doing no alternate IFR have to do with weather and services. And when I mean services, I mean like what's available at the airport. So weather-wise, you've got to have, and I'm going to have to honestly look it up here, because I look it up most times when we do get scheduled for no alternate IFR. If there's any kind of question in your mind, you'll look it up. There's too much stuff to remember all of this every single time you go flying. It's just too much stuff to remember everything. So it's good to have like little notes, and it's good to know where to go and look this stuff up. So for example, I go look in our operations manual and no alternate IFR. And there's a restriction as well for where it can happen. So most North American airlines restricted to the North American airspace, where things are pretty reliable, and you can get good information. The other thing is good information. So no alternate IFR usually only applies to domestic flying, and by domestic in North America, I mean United States and Canada kind of combined. The level of service, the amount of weather service available, communication services available in this area are so vast that you can communicate with dispatch pretty readily, and if something comes off the rails, you can divert. Them captains will go through all that, still don't know how the coffee machine works. Yeah, that's true. We don't get trained on the coffee machine. A lot of flight attendants, I find, are very protective of their galley anyways. So some people hate when you tinker with their galley. Other people are like, have at it, do what you want to do. If you know how to make coffee, go make it yourself. Other people are they like everything arranged in a certain way, and so they get very upset when you get in there and do stuff, and certainly without asking. But yeah, so as far as no alternate IFR, usually only happens in areas where you're going to have a lot of good communication coverage. So overseas flights are not going to go no alternate, because first of all, usually the time length as well. That's one of the first conditions, is flights not more than 6 hours of scheduled length. So you know, the longer out the forecast, the more unreliable. That's right, don't touch my stuff. I love it. Yeah, so the farther out the forecast, the less reliable it might be, and the more things might change. So, first of all, no alternate IFR is usually limited to shorter flights. 6 hours is pretty long, but it's, you know, you're not doing oceanic flights, you're not doing polar flights or anything like that. And again, domestic mostly because you want to have the reliability of information coming in. So outside of North America, and Europe would probably also be able to do this quite well, but for North American airlines, they keep it to within North America themselves. Weather is a big obvious thing, so you need to check the forecast to make sure there's no risk of fog or other restrictions of visibility, including precipitation forecast are reported below 3 statute miles. So 3 statute miles, so it's got to basically be VFR all day. No risk of thunderstorms, isolated or otherwise, in the forecast. No risk of freezing precipitation in the forecast. So these are kind of bad things that would really kind of ruin your day. So thunderstorms in the forecast, no, you got to have an alternate. Freezing precipitation, oh, you better have an alternate. And then there's specific stuff. So forecast of ceiling at least 1,000 feet above the FAF altitude and visibility of at least 3 miles. So again, we need to have some reasonably VFR conditions where you're going to be able to do whatever approach you might do. You're going to see the airport from a long way out. It's not even close to the limit. Coffee is important. Leave it to the pros. I like it. I like it. The other consideration for no alternate IFR is let's see here. Why can't I see that? Oh, destination airport equipment. That's what I'm looking for. So the other big condition you need to do no alternate IFR is 2 separate suitable runways, and that's one of the big conditions. 2 separate suitable runways. So having 2 ends of the same runway does not count as 2 separate suitable runways. So you need to have 2 separate suitable runways. So if you have a long runway and a short runway, the short runway is too short for you to land, or it's grass and you're trying to land in there in a 737, that's not suitable. You need to have 2 runways that are suitable that you could land at. So Seattle perfectly qualifies. They've got 3 parallel runways, not quite, but close to 10,000 feet long, more than good enough for the 737. And you also need 2 suitable independent IFR approach aids at the destination airport. Yeah, only one procedure may be a GPS approach. So you need to have a bunch of different approaches available. So if the ILS goes offline at the destination, we can still do another approach somewhere, either another ILS or a GPS or whatever. But you need to have 2 different runways and with 2 separate IFR approach aids, and at least one of them needs to have an emergency backup power supply, which most ILSs will. You can usually assume that most ILSs do, but you can't go to like a single runway airport. You can, I'm just trying to think of single runway airports. DCA might be one that you won't do no alternate IFR to, because the approaches only go to 1 runway there. I don't think any of the approaches really lead to runway 33, and you might have a hard time landing 33 in a 737, maybe if you're doing an Embraer. But that's an example. I'm trying to think of other San Diego. There you go. San Diego's another single runway airport, so you couldn't do no alternate IFR to San Diego because there's only one runway there. You need at least 2 runways to destination. So most major airports qualify, but there are some out there, single runway airports, where you couldn't do no alternate IFR. Some airlines will just have rules. Most Canadian airlines have a rule that St. John's, you can't do no alternate IFR to St. John's. The nearest other airports, first of all, the weather in St. John's is foggy more often than not. But even if it's not supposed to be foggy, the fog often springs up unexpectedly off the ocean, and the alternates are a long way away. The nearest alternate is like Gander, which is like half an hour flying away. It's a long way to the nearest airport. So that's the other thing that kind of goes in there is, if something really bad does happen, what are the alternatives? Like if you're going to Seattle and something was to really kind of come off the rails in Seattle, there's other airports nearby we could divert to on our way to Seattle. There's other nearby airports that would qualify to land a 737 in an emergency. Payne Field, Boeing Field for crying out loud, it's right there. Renton even. Not great services, but at least you could land there and be safely on the ground, get some fuel, and go again. So there are places. You can go, but so those are the kind of things you're looking at with no alternate IFR. You're looking for the weather has to be like really VFR, with no chance of like bad storms or bad weather that's going to likely impact the airport. You have to have 2 separate suitable runways with 2 separate suitable approach aids, and generally it's all domestic flying. Wait, why are we going to Seattle? Because the airline scheduled us to. I don't know. They like to run a service to Seattle. Additional considerations, at any time the PIC can decide that they don't like the no alternate IFR and ask dispatch to put an alternate on there. Usually got to have a reason, but minimum fuel and oil boarded, en route navigation facilities. You got to have communication with the company en route as well. You got to be able to check the weather halfway there and make sure that the weather's going to be good at your destination. And then, as I said, that airlines may have airports that they know don't practice no alternate IFR, and I believe Washington Reagan was one of them actually, where we couldn't use Washington Reagan as an alternate, and we couldn't have no alternate IFR to Washington Reagan. There's too many security issues potentially at Washington Reagan that could shut that airport down, that the airlines always insisted on having an alternate for that, because that airport can be shut down on a whim by the CIA or the military because of some kind of security threat. So you wouldn't want to go there no alternate IFR. Christ. No one said you had to come to Seattle. Maybe you can find a flight out somewhere. I think we'll find some fun stuff to do in Seattle. In all honesty, I've never been to Seattle, but it looks like it's going to be a beautiful day there. It's supposed to be screaming VFR, which is why we're able to do no alternate IFR today. So it looks like a beautiful day in Seattle. You can get out, you'll see the Space Needle, ride the monorail. I don't know what else to do in Seattle. Drink some coffee. I don't even know what to do in Seattle, really. But I would love to go and find out one day. I've never been to Seattle, so I wouldn't mind going and finding out one day what to do in Seattle. Divert to Nashville. We're getting fried chicken. We are somewhere over Idaho. I'm going to say this right now. We are not going to make it to Nashville on 8,500 pounds of fuel. We're going to make it to Seattle with 5 tons. We could almost divert to Portland at that point. It would be a bit of a strain, I think, but we could probably divert to Portland at that point. We'd probably land with a little bit less than reserve fuel at that point. We did the airline some favors today, and we away for a second here. We did the airline a favor today and saved them a lot of gas. It is a nice airplane. Now we're just having fun. I'm just trying to take some shots that we could correct this video when I publish it. Alright, really what we should be doing is setting up for the approach already, because I can see our top of descent point there is about 200 miles away. It's coming up pretty quickly here. What are we grounding here? Only 406, huh? Alright, we might this cost index up a little bit here. There. Now we're on the go-home power. Alright, so, yeah, let's start setting up for our arrival into Seattle today. So, I'm going to pull out my phone because I got the ATIS app on my phone. It's easier than even pulling up the weather on... it's even easier than pulling up the weather on VATSIM here. So let's just get the ATIS app, and then we'll also get the active runway out of this. I feel my throat's kind of starting to die on me already here. I don't know why. I've had a sore throat for a couple days. I was hoping I was kind of over it this morning, and it's probably doing a video and talking for 3 hours is probably not a good idea for a sore throat. ILS and charted visual approach procedures, runway 34 left and 34 right. Departing 34 right. Departing aircraft plan and brief numbers for both 34 right and 34 center. Attendants approaches to parallel runways. 3008 on the meter. Alright, so let's set 3008 here. It's set. Alright. So I believe we're already set up for 3-4. I can't remember which one I set up, to be honest. 3-4 left, which actually I think is probably the best plan. So let's plan on that. Let's just pull up my charts here. I forgot to put myself back on there after my external views. Alright, so let's pull up 3-4 left. SeaTac. Alright, we are on Chin's arrival. We're going to follow it in for 3-4 left. So let's go pick that one. 3-4 left. Alright, and I did put in a transition before, but CDUG is probably the right transition for a straight-in arrival. And let's just check this all in the box and make sure that everything is as it should be here. Alright, so the Chin's 5 arrival. Let's see, 20-2. Alright. So we want to do... let's see, yeah. Alright, so starting at Pendleton, we go to Bruck, Sunid, Yakima, Chins, Ratty, turbojets. Landing north, 12,000. So there it is. Ratty, 250 knots, 12,000. It's there. And at that point, probably after Ratty, the Tracon would normally turn us west and straight onto an intercept here. But Hump, turbojets landing south, no. Auburn, 250 knots, and then we turn to the 250 heading. If we haven't gotten anything else, so there's the 250 vector. In reality, probably after Ratty, I would expect we're probably going to get we're going to give ourselves a left turn to join the straight-in final. So Sidug, Hipro, Josta, Jalon, Hovos. And let's see here. Hipro's above 5, Josta above 4, Jalon above 20, or at 2400, Hovos. And yeah. 4 left. The minimum's 579. We're looking for 110.75. Alright, so 579 for the minimums. Set that. $579, 110.75 by 344. Set course on your side, 344.
344 set.
Alright, we need 110.75. Should set it on both sides for backup. 110.75, 110.75, okay. And let's just check the missed approach instructions as well. 34 left, so climb 900 feet, climbing left turn, heading 300. Outbound on Seattle VOR 310 radial to VATSIM intersection, at or above 3,000. And then 5,000, that's the missed approach altitude, so the climb to 5,000 on Seattle VOR radial 310 to Lowfold intersection. So have to cross VATSIM at or above 3,000, but the target altitude for the missed approach is 5,000. Alright, so that's that. We need a half-mile visibility. It's supposed to be a beautiful day down in Seattle. Coming across some beautiful mountains here. I think we're just about ready for an approach briefing already. Are you ready for the approach briefing?
Go ahead.
You have control.
I have control.
Alright, give him control for the approach briefing so I can focus on the briefing and he can focus on flying the airplane if anything should happen that needs flying. Alright, so we are heading to Seattle today. We're doing the Chins 5 arrival. This is plate 20-2 and effective on the 8th of September. Let's see here. DME radar required landing north and south restrictions are issued per the Seattle flow and also serves BFIK. And Renton, that's fine. Pardon me. Yeah, so we've already checked all the routing in the box and the restrictions are in there. The bottom altitude on this is 11,000. So once we're clear for the approach, maintain 11,000. The approach we're expecting today is the ILS to runway 34 left here in Seattle. 110.75 IBEJ, 344 the inbound course. Glide slope at Jalon 2400. The missed approach, or sorry, the DA is 579. Touchdown zone at 379. The airport elevation 433. We got 450 set there for landing elevation. The missed approach is in the box. It says published or otherwise assigned by ATC. If we were to get any ATC online, nobody yet. MSA is highest east of the field, 6,400. We got to come over these mountains to get into Seattle. So 6,400 east. If anything untoward happens and we need low terrain, turn west. Go west, young man. Let's see here. So it's a standard 3-degree slope once we intercept the glide slope at Jalon, 2,400. Poppies on the left, MALSR lighting, and 2,400 or half miles the required visibility. It's supposed to be VFR. Once we land on 3-4 left, we're going to take a convenient right turn off the runway. I'm going to expect we're probably going to make Echo. We can try for Juliet, but I doubt we're going to make Juliet. So it's going to be most likely Echo, and we're going to have to cross 3-4 center and right to get to the terminal. So we'll have to make sure we keep an eye out for other aircraft. Listen for a crossing clearance if ATC is online, and if there's no ATC, we're going to have to monitor the traffic situation ourselves in Seattle. Right now, there's 2 departures out of Seattle. Chances are they're going to be gone, but some other people will probably log in by then as well. So I'm just thinking right now, I'm just going to have a quick look over here at my other computer. and just have a look for a gate for a flight from Jackson Hole to Seattle. So we're going to find a gate so that we can get some accurate gating information here. Let's see here. I only fly a couple times a week, I guess. 765, that's the flight, so it's supposed to go today. Let's find out what gate they're going to dock at. November 18. Hopefully this is a gate that exists. November 18. So over here on the North Satellite, yeah, I think that exists. We'll have to see what GSX gives us when we get a little closer in, but anyways, looks like we're going to dock on the North Satellite somewhere. Alright, terrain is an issue in Seattle, mostly mountains to the east. If we follow the restriction on the star, it should keep us east of the all the mountains. Weather is, again, not much of an issue. It's looking like a beautiful day in Seattle. If I go here and just go airport Seattle, airports, Seattle, weather. Winds are calm, 10 miles, few at 12,000 right now, and the TAF says, yeah, more of the same all day. It's going to be scattered clouds, light winds. It's going to be a beautiful day in Seattle today. Alright, so weather's not an issue, and then operational, no MELs, no failures on the aircraft yet, no TAMs. Let's just have a quick look-see here at the no TAMs to just make sure there's nothing that's affecting our arrival into Seattle. Alright, Bravo Sierra and ProGen 3-4 right close aircraft. Yeah, it's not us. VOR, the VOR is not monitored. Really not that much. 3-4 right Pappies. Okay, that's not bad. 3-4 left, maybe 3-4 left in here. Only the special authorization Cap 1s, that's fine. Yeah, not too much. Wow, that's for major airports, that's the lowest number of no TAMs I've seen in a long time. Alright, so yeah, that's basically it. No TAMs, there's no major no TAMs that's going to affect our operation. Again, for our arrival into Seattle, we're looking at about 7,500 pounds of fuel. So we definitely have enough fuel to do a go around, come back, try it again without being down into the minimum of our fuel. However, oh sorry, that's our fuel quantity right now. 4.5. We can do a go around, come back and try it again. However, if we do a go around, we are going to basically commit to Seattle more or less. If we need to go somewhere else, Portland is pretty much a write-off because it's too far. There are a couple of airports nearby. Payne Field would probably be the best alternative to Seattle at this point, just as sort of a backup. Not great services, but I believe they do have a passenger terminal we can go to, and you know, at least dock and get some fuel and then take off again for Seattle if we had to. So. Yeah, that I think is our safest bet. And I'm just going to check the weather right now at Payne Field, and it is right now light winds, clear skies, 16 degrees. So yeah, that's sort of my back of the pocket. And again, it just comes down to what I was talking about earlier, having an out, always kind of having a backup plan in mind. It's not a great airport to get to from a service perspective. I don't know if Alaska even serves Payne Field. I think they do. So I think we should have customer service agents there to meet the flight, that sort of thing. I don't anticipate we're not going to get to Seattle. I would give it about a 2% chance we might not get to Seattle, something along those lines. Like something pretty kind of black swan would have to happen for us not to get to Seattle. But have that in the back of your mind. What are the other nearby airports we could possibly defer to if we actually came down to the last of our fuel and we can't get to Seattle? Again, like I have a lot of personal issues with this whole No Alternate IFR. Let me just do this first. Any questions?
No questions.
Alright, so he's going to do his whole descent briefing here. Did we ever turn the seatbelts off after we climbed up to that thunderstorm? We never did. I'm surprised the captain didn't bother us about that. They don't want anybody getting up and use the bathroom anyways. Sky Diva, come on. You should have been on this. Where are you? Let's see. What was I? Yeah. Again, this is one of those reasons, like, you always want to kind of have a little bit of an out something. You know, but I understand the airline perspective on it. Like, and we've had this discussion before. Like the frequency of diversions at major airlines now is for the most part pretty low on your average day. Now you will get days where there will be diversions. You will get days where an airport will close due to bad weather, and you'll get lots of diversions unexpectedly. A thunderstorm rolls through Chicago, and all of a sudden people start diverting like crazy. It happens. But when you look at the overall size of most airline operations in North America versus the number of diversions they do, it's such a small percentage that carrying around the extra gas just on the off chance that you might divert somewhere, and it's a pretty small off chance, it's just not worth the extra expense carrying it around. I understand that perspective. I understand the airline's perspective on that. If you don't have a second approach in you at the destination, you have to divert to your alternate. It happens so infrequently that that airlines are willing to eat that cost when it does happen. If we take 5% less fuel on every flight, but nobody's got, nobody's carrying around extra fuel, 5%, less weight being carried around, fuel weight being carried around on every flight, that adds up to a lot of savings per year in terms of fuel burn. We're not burning fuel to carry that extra fuel around. The couple days a year where we might have a slew of diversions because we're not carrying enough fuel around, we can eat that cost and still end up ahead by not carrying around the 5% extra fuel the whole rest of the year. So I've kind of come around to that train of thought. I still won't hesitate. If the weather looks iffy or some kind of circumstance looks iffy, I won't hesitate to ask for the extra fuel myself. But I get where the airlines are coming from, and I get they're trying to, I get what they're trying to do to try and save that money and make it, make it reasonable. So I'm not. I begin to come around a little bit more to no alternate IFR. There, the last 5 or 10 years, for the first 5 years I was a captain, I was very adamantly against. No alternate IFR, and I just wouldn't accept it. And I even had a call from a chief pilot one time. It's like, why are you not accepting an alternate IFR? I said, I just disagree with it as a principle. I don't. If you're gonna give me no alternate IFR, I'm gonna carry the extra gas anyways to go to the alternate anyway. So why not just put the alternate on the paper and be done with it? I don't think he was happy about it, but he couldn't really argue against it. It's one of the nice things that airline pilots do get a lot of latitude, because once you get up in this airplane, you're on your own. The two people up front, you're basically on your own to solve whatever issues come your way. And it's not that you're all alone. You have backup, and that's one of the other things too. The flip side of the equation is you do have backups. You have a dispatcher that you can usually get a hold of, if not by radio, by ACARS. ATC is almost always available by radio. You can call them and ask them questions and get information from them. You can raise MOC through the radio eventually. There's lots of backup out there, but at the end of the day, the two people up at the front of the airplane have to make choices, decisions, and actually, finish the flight, do whatever needs to be done. So pilots are given a lot of latitude. They're given a lot of resources, but they're also given a lot of latitude to solve problems as best as they see fit. And so to that end, like, airlines will often, airlines generally tend to be pretty conservative business for the most part. They tend to run things pretty conservatively, and most airlines will have the disagreement resolution policy. If the captain and the dispatcher disagree on the flight plan, and they cannot, through discussion, eventually convince each other that one way or the other is correct, then if they can never reach a consensus, then the most conservative course of action prevails. So if the captain says, I want extra gas, and the dispatcher says, you don't need it, if they cannot convince each other and reach a consensus on it, then the most conservative course of action is to carry extra gas. It costs the company more money, but that, the captain will usually win in the end. So, and I think most dispatchers know that, try to be reasonable, say, I don't think I see the need for this, but if you really want it, I'll give it to you. The cop-out though is that when the dispatchers give it to the captains, there's a special category on the flight plan for gas that the captain asked for that the dispatcher didn't think that was needed. It's usually called operational, and it's different from any of the other pre-assigned categories that the dispatcher might use. The dispatcher usually has weather and ATC as the two major categories of extra fuel they can give the flight, kind of discretionary fuel to handle whatever kind of contingent situations come up. But there's usually a separate category called operating fuel, which is above and beyond what the dispatcher suggested, recommended, planned on. If the captain asks for an extra 300 pounds or 300 kilograms of fuel, the dispatcher will put it on there. And the thing is that the dispatcher will not, it will never show up against the dispatcher, if you will. And You know, airlines still track these things. Most of the time, they're not going to, unless someone has a chronic problem of always asking for extra fuel, no one's ever going to probably have a discussion with them. But if it's a chronic thing where every single flight they're always asking, and that operating fuel is showing up on every single flight, then there might be some discussions with management about, okay, well, why do you feel, do you not have the confidence in our flight planning system, in our fuel planning, in our dispatchers? Why are you always asking for this extra fuel? It's one thing if you do it once in a while when the weather looks bad, maybe you see something the dispatcher doesn't, the dispatcher disagreed with you, but they did it anyways. If it's once in a while, it's not going to be a big deal. No one's going to bat an eyelid at it. But if it's every day, that's the thing. Is that if the dispatcher puts it in that category, the dispatcher's sort of off the hook for that fuel. It says between the lines that the captain asked for this and they got it, and the dispatcher maybe didn't agree with it. And I've only done that a handful of times myself, where the dispatcher and I could not reach a consensus on how much extra fuel to load on the airplane for a flight. And it's certain airports that it's not that they scare me, it's that I've dealt with them enough times that I know that things never go according to plan. Newark is top of that list. You always have tons of extra fuel. Most dispatchers are pretty good about Newark and LaGuardia. You always carry tons of extra fuel to go to those kind of airports. Dallas is one that, it's not a terrible airport. There's a lot of facilities, there's a lot of runways, there's a lot of approaches, but there's a lot of bad weather in Texas that just comes up just out of nowhere, never on the forecast. And more times than I care to count, I've gotten to Dallas with less than the minimum fuel. Because of unforecast weather. Thunderstorms that just pop up in the middle of the day in Dallas. It happens all the time in Newark, yeah. It happens all the time in DFW. Newark and LaGuardia, they'll have a reputation, so dispatchers usually put a lot of extra fuel on there, and I never have to ask for extra fuel for those two. It's Dallas is the one that nobody ever thinks about as being like, oh, it's a really lousy weather airport, because it's usually in the morning it's fine, but most of the time our flights end up getting there in the middle of the afternoon, and then you end up with a 45-minute weather hold because there's a thunderstorm moving right across the field. Oh, that wasn't in the forecast. And then dispatcher's always like, it's fine. The forecast said it's fine. I'm like, I know it says it's fine, but look at the temperature, look at the humidity, look at the lifted index on the charts. You'll see that there's a good chance that we are going to have to do a hold on the way there. There's a good chance the thunderstorm's going to hold. And more often than not, I've had to ECAR as a dispatcher. DFW with weather, really? But the thing is, it's not in the forecast half the time, and that's the thing that drives me nuts. So the dispatchers look at the forecast and say, it's going to be fine. No big deal. You'll make it just fine. And then we get down there, and we hold for 45 minutes, and then they give us the arrival. They change us to a different arrival that requires us to fly 150 miles off away from the airport to go rejoin the other arrival and get around the storm, and all of a sudden it's like you have minimum fuel when you get there. I have landed at DFW with the minimum fuel more times than I care to count. But the dispatchers always look at the forecast and say, it's going to be fine. And we'll give you 5 minutes of extra fuel. Okay, 10 minutes of extra fuel. It's like, that's just not going to cut it. I know you guys want, under pressure not to put on too much fuel, but sometimes you just got to put on the extra fuel. Anyways, it's one of those airports. It's not one that people think of immediately, and it's not one that they think of as being, beset by huge delays, but if you have to be that flight that's en route when all of a sudden the thunderstorm rolls across the field and everything stopped for half an hour, 45 minutes, that might be all the time you get. Yeah, I never accepted no alternate IFR in DFW either. Always held an alternate. That was one that especially really, I never believed in it. I never believed in it. And then taxi for 30 minutes to the gate. At least when you're taxiing to the gate, you're not burning too much gas. If you've got the minimum 30 minutes of fuel, flight fuel when you landed, then you can taxi around for like 6 hours, probably before you run out of gas. Almost never happens, but I mean it did happen. And again, black swan events, things you don't expect. Like you look at Vancouver last winter in December when it snowed, like 12 inches in Vancouver, an airport that almost never gets snow, and the whole thing bloody shut down. Ground to a halt. Couldn't get the tugs moving. They didn't have chains to put on the tugs because they don't believe in it there because they never get really any winter weather. And there were airplanes that landed at like 10 p.m. There was one airplane that landed at like 10 p.m. and at like 10 a.m. the next morning, the airplane was still out there on the apron waiting for a gate. They actually had to come and refuel the airplane halfway through the night because they couldn't get the people off the airplane. And they're just sitting there burning fuel, waiting for a gate to open up, and they couldn't get any airplanes moved. All the gates were full. Couldn't get any airplanes moved because they couldn't find tugs that had chains that could make it through this deep snow. That one right there is another black swan event, and they don't happen that often, but you need to be ready for it. one of the biggest challenges in this industry is that we've made this, we've made flying so safe, so safe, so reliable, 98% of the time, that that people don't expect that 2% of stuff going wrong, and some people just get used to it. Like you can go an entire career in aviation now and never have an engine fail on you. 50 years ago, that was unheard of. You're going to have engine failures. You're going to have a bunch of them. But you can go an entire career. These engines out here are so reliable now. You can go an entire career without ever having an engine fail on you. It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. You know, so pilots become very used to kind of most of the time it all works out, but you've always just got to think in the back of your mind, what are those scenarios? What are those kind of worst case scenarios that could happen, that could really kind of throw a wrench in our plans, and what are we gonna do about them? I'm just realizing here that I have not set up my arrival on FS2 cruise, so let me just do that really quickly. Alright, so let's just set this up here. We're gonna do a star, it's an ILS. We're gonna do flaps 30. Oh, you know what I didn't get ref numbers up there. Bleeds on, dry runway, auto brake 3 works. No, we're not going to single engine taxi. We're going to a gate. Delay the APU start. Terrain's a threat. Final sector. We'll say yes. Minimum altitude. Let's get this out again because I guess it's down here. 579. Oh no, I lost it. There it is. For some reason it doesn't show up in the taskbar. So yeah. Let's see here. So 579. List approach altitude, I remember it's 5,000. I forget what its final approach fix is, though. Do you know where it is? Let's just look it up on here. And let's take off the weather. Seattle approach. 34 left. 2,400. There we go. Alright, so that's all set up. Ready for that. Step away for a minute. Just looking at this beautiful airplane from the outside here. There's a lot of work to do on this airplane here. See the individual pitot tubes, AOA vape. Oh, the beacon is flashing. I was going to say the beacon's not flashing, but it is flashing right there. Alright, we're just about ready to start our approach or descent. At one time Atlanta had 1 inch of snow and it crushed the whole operation. Yeah, exactly. Those are the kind of things that, like, and sometimes these things happen. Like the snow in Vancouver was forecast, but it wasn't forecast to be very much. But it just happened to set up just a wind right off the ocean, just the right temperature, just the right direction, that it just blanketed the airport with 12 inches. So they were expecting like an inch or two, and it just was like 12 inches of snow. It was crazy, not what they're expecting. Coffee's already done. But yeah, so you always need to kind of be ready for those black swan events. You never know when they're going to occur, and complacency is a big problem with flight crews. Everything works so well all the time that we just assume it's going to work well every single time. That's why captains get paid the big bucks to think negatively. Be optimistic, but think pessimistic. Think what are the bad things that could happen? Well, you know, I mean, we could lose a hydraulic system. We could lose the gear. What are the alternatives today? You know, what if the weather does sock in Seattle? What are my alternatives? Have some outs, you know, ready in your mind. That way, when these bad things happen, you can start to make some pretty snap decisions pretty quickly, rather than having to spend a lot of time thinking about it. The captains that I've flown with that have done well at some of these sim sessions have been the ones that have been ready to make quick decisions because they've already looked through everything ahead of time. And it's hard to do. They do these sim sessions pretty well. They don't give you the flight plan until you're done the briefing. So they do the briefing. They talk about a whole bunch of leadership stuff and kind of decision making and planning and workload management and all that stuff, and they talk about it, And then they're like, okay, you guys ready? Here's a flight plan. You have 50 minutes to look through it in the room. Then we're going to go in the sim. You have 30 minutes to get the airplane set up, and then we're supposed to depart. Think negatively and call for meals. Yeah. You never know. You never know. You know, and airlines try to set up guidance about certain things as well, like you know, potable water being one. Like if the potable water doesn't work on the airplane, or you know, they have trouble topping it up. There's an airplane we had that kept on leaking the potable water. Every time they'd fill it up, they'd fix it. We'd fill it up. It'd be fine. Go flying. You get into your destination. It's leaking all over the place, and the tank's almost empty before you get to your destination. And so that's, you know, or maybe, you know, the guys show up and they fill the water part way, but they don't fill it all the way. They think it's full, but it's not. Our airline set potable water limitations based on flight length. So potable water, yeah, I know. But anyways, set up limitations based on flight length. So you know, a flight that's like 2 hours or less, if you could leave with like 50% water in this type of airplane, you know, 3 to 4 hours, you need 75%. Anything over 4 hours, you have to have 100% before you go, to try and set these limits, to try and avoid everyone always having to use their discretion, and try and set some standards that can be adhered to pretty well. But at the same time, it's a lot of discretion given to people. And I actually read a great book just a little while ago that kind of highlighted how really big organizations are able to maintain an incredibly complex operation, especially through adverse situations, through adverse effects. So the one example that they gave of two completely contrasting reactions, and which one worked and which one didn't, was Hurricane Katrina. So Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, I guess it was just over 10 years ago, and it was worse than anybody had expected. It was absolutely worse than anybody expected, and nobody even realized how bad it was for a couple of days, because they couldn't even get proper information in and out, because like there was no communication lines, and the people who were up high in FEMA didn't want to believe that it was as bad. It couldn't be as bad as you said it was until the real information came out. So there was the government response, and then there was the corporate response, and the government response was just paralyzed. And part of it was because of the top-down nature of the bureaucracy of the government, which nobody down on the ground was allowed to make decisions of what was needed. No, you had to just report what the situation was and pass it up the chain, and people higher than the chain with the proper authorization would make the decisions on what was needed and what wasn't. So the people who were on the ground trying to evaluate things and try and provide the frontline support were not given sufficient control of the situation to say this is what we need. All they could do was say this is the situation. I think we need this, but then you had to get authorization from higher up to actually get it. You contrast that, and I just see we're coming up on top of descent here, so I'm just going to set the altitude here. Set it to 11,000, our bottom altitude on this descent here. Oops. So you contrast the way the government's reaction. The government took days to get aid into New Orleans and help people out. I'll tell you in a second here. Yeah, so it took them days and days to get aid into New Orleans. Contrast that reaction to Walmart, which I'm not a big fan of Walmart to begin with for a lot of different reasons. But in this story, it was a great example of what was done right. And basically, just before the hurricane hit, the corporate office saw it was going to be obviously a major impact on the area, and so they had a meeting, a virtual meeting with like all the regional reps and all the store managers and everything, and basically said, you know, there's a good chance that the lines of communication are going to be cut. You're not going to be able to get through to corporate. And what they basically says was, you guys are probably going to have to make decisions above your pay grade. Make the best decision you can make at the time with the information you have, and we'll back you on it. And with that, they gave permission for people to make decisions they weren't authorized to make. And as a result, Walmart was able to very quickly adapt to the changing dynamic situation within New Orleans. So I think it was 3 days later, the federal government started to finally send aid trucks into New Orleans. But by that point, 3 days after the storm, Walmart had already sent 2,500 truckloads of supplies into New Orleans, because they'd had managers that had said, this is what we need. We need these supplies. We need them now. And middle managers were not going to the upper management to say, hey, where can we get this from, or are we allowed to do this? They were simply doing what needed to be done. And so it used dozens of examples of the Walmart stores reacting to the situation in front of them. When they realized that people were not going to be coming into work, they did their best to support the employees, and they said, whoever can come to work, great. If not, just do whatever you can, take care of yourself. And then they turned around, they looked inside the stores, and they said, okay, we have supplies in here that people need, but we can't even open the stores because we don't have power. So then they just started moving the stuff outside the stores and giving it away. They gave away diapers, they gave away baby formula, they gave away prescription medication. They basically, when they started getting truck trailers in, they just basically had trailers outside the stores, and they just basically let people in the trailer say, take what you need. It's all corporate supplies, but just take what you need. When the first responders came and said, we need equipment, they say, take what you need, and they'd write them up little paper slips and just say, we'll keep track of this, we'll build the government eventually, but just take what you need right now. Never mind the fact we don't have a computer that works. We're going to find a way to get this done now because you need it now. You don't need this in 3 days or 5 days when we get the communication lines back up and running and our point of sale system up and running again. You need it now. So they were giving away stuff. They were hosting like mini stores outside the stores with whatever urgent supplies needed to be given away, food, medication, all that kind of stuff. And so in the first 3 or 4 days after Hurricane Katrina, Walmart was a shining example of what you can do in a big, large, complex organization when you empower the people at the lower levels to make decisions when they need to, instead of saying, like the government did, well, you're too low in the organization, you can't make the decision, you got to pass it up. The government was turning away truckloads of water that were being driven down to New Orleans, saying we don't need it, not knowing that they actually did need it because there was not enough information flowing through the whole ladder. So it was really kind of neat to read this whole story and just see, and I couldn't help but think about it the whole time I thought about applying it to airlines. Incredibly complicated organizations, and they give a lot of people, a lot of the middle and even lower managers, a lot of power over day-to-day operations. So, and pilots, captains are the first ones that I think of. They get a lot of power to make decisions about individual flights, but even individual stations, they get a lot of power to make decisions about individual flights. They may not get to cancel a flight, but whatever services are needed, gate changes, things like that, they don't have to go asking anybody else for permission. They can make operational decisions kind of on the fly, and it's how these complex organizations manage to continue working is because individuals are empowered to make the decisions instead of having to pass it back up the buck. There's instead of the one guy who's sitting in the dispatch running the whole operation for the day having to make every last decision about every last flight, he's got people supporting him making decisions when they need to. Meanwhile, they don't listen to flight attendants. I know. Don't even get me started on that sometimes. But hopefully most of your pilots are going to listen to you and advocate on your behalf as that sort of middle manager. So the book I read was called The Checklist Manifesto, which is funny that this is the topic I chose to talk about out of it, but I don't even have it now because I loaned it to somebody else because it was such a good book. It was a short book. I read it in like 3 days when I was at the cottage, but it was called The Checklist Manifesto, and what it really was aimed at was aimed at the medical profession. It's written by a doctor, and he's sort of explaining like why do we not use checklists in medicine? Pilots have pretty big egos sometimes too, but they use checklists relentlessly without questioning, without taking it as a personal affront to their own abilities by using a checklist. Whereas in medicine, like most professionals are like, oh, I'm too smart for that. So it talks all about him trying to sort of organize some of the very first medical checklists that were in use. It's a really good book. It's a really short read if you're interested if you're in the healthcare industry, but also if you're in the aviation industry. It's a great book, even though we do take checklists for granted. It's interesting to read about some of the stuff. The author actually, when he was trying to create this one checklist for hospitals, he actually went to Boeing, and he went and talked to the guys who write checklists at Boeing and spent hours chatting with them. They took him in the sim to show him how one checklist particular works. Atul Gawande, exactly. That's the guy. Just ordered it on Audible. It's a really good book, and it's a really short read. Like I said, like I read it in 3 days. I think 3 days, pretty much. I read the whole thing. Now that was pretty much half the day sitting there reading because I was just lazing at the cottage doing nothing. But I read it in 3 days, and it's not a long read, but it's really kind of neat. And a lot of the stuff kind of I went into. I kept on kind of applying it to my own knowledge of aviation. And even though we do use checklists a lot, there's some really neat stuff in there that some information in there. But there's some great stories. It tells some great stories. Really easy read though. So if you get a chance, the Checklist Manifesto. It's about 10 years old, but it's still very relevant today. Transition set altimeter 3008.
Three 008 set. Passing 16,500. Checked.
Descent checklist.
Now. Descent checklist. Pressurization. Landing altitude is 450 feet. Recall checked. Auto brake level 3. The landing data.
VREF 131. Minimums 579 feet.
VREF 131. Minimums 579 feet. Approach briefing.
Completed.
Descent checklist complete.
Wow. We had the anti-ice on the whole time, and I thought about turning it off, and I just started chatting, and I totally forgot about it. And that's one thing I like about Airbus. There would be a little message on here that just says anti-ice on, right in front of your line of sight, like on the 737, it's pretty far out of your line of sight to see the anti-ice is still on. Alright, so it looks like we're pretty much kind of going past the mountain there. Yeah, at Ratty, we can probably pretty much take up a westerly heading at 11,000 feet and intercept final there. Sometimes. Skydiva, I'm sorry, I don't remember what I react to sometimes, but I hope that most of the pilots at your airline are listening to you. I gotta say, like, the airline I work for now, I am consistently pleasantly surprised by how receptive the pilots are to everybody. The captains especially are to everybody. The flight attendants, they really look upon the flight attendants, at least the service directors anyways, who they interact with most, as a big part of the team. It's true, like, for me as a pilot, like, I 100% believe that the flight crew, what probably the thing that probably exemplifies the most how much respect I think I give to the flight attendants is I can't believe that you guys are not subject to the same duty rules we are. Because you guys have a very important safety function in the aircraft, and you know, if there's ever an emergency, you guys have a super important safety function to help make sure that everyone gets out of the airplane, you know, safely. If there's ever an emergency, but you guys can work like 16 or 18-hour days according to your union contracts. You have no legal protections. There's no legal requirement for you to have a maximum work day. Like, that kind of blows my mind. You know, pilots, we have a very strictly regulated maximum work day. You guys do not, and that blows my mind because you guys are a super important part of the team in terms of if there's ever an abnormality, you guys are going to take care of the people in the back. But even just day to day, just take care of the people in the back. You are the eyes, ears, the nose of the flight deck behind that door, and the fact that, you know, you don't get that respect, it bugs me. All right, let's get a heading in here. Okay, we're gonna go heading select 250. All right, so there we are. We're not level, but we're gonna level 11,000 here shortly. We're gonna do 250 knots on a heading of 250. Take us over to the approach course here. Sometimes I wish I were at the nose, though. Yeah, when I say you're the nose of the flight deck, I mean more like smelling smoke and things like that in the cabin. I don't necessarily mean smelling the passengers, but I get that 100%. I've heard some terrible, terrible stories about what people do in the cabin. You know, 95% of the people are reasonably decent people with reasonably decent hygiene habits, if you will, but it just takes 5%, not even, to to really. Oh my God! Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I couldn't do that job. In all honesty, I could not do that job. Much respect to you for being able to put up with some of these people and the way they try to treat you. Sometimes it is crazy, and the scheduling department as well. Yeah, I can't believe, like I said, the way you're treated sometimes. It's disgusting. Both by the people in the back and the company sometimes as well. But you know, I 100% I try to have my flight attendants back. But the one airline I used to work at, we used to have 25-minute turns. You'd do like 4 legs on a day, 25-minute turns on a Dash 8, and you wouldn't, like, it would be, you know, 4 legs back to back, 25-minute turns, not even a chance to eat. And they're short legs too. They're like 45-minute legs, so like no chance to eat all day. And like you get the gate agents like standing there, like, you guys ready to deport? I'd be like, no, my cabin crew is eating. They haven't eaten in 3 hours, 4 hours. They haven't eaten since whatever time. They're eating. And I'll tell you when we can start boarding the flight. Sometimes you just got to stand up and support people. It's the middle of summer. Throw away that natural deodorant away and use the chemicals, please. Wouldn't it be great if you could just walk through the cabin and just with like a perfume bottle and just like spray them? Just like, you need this. That's just for everybody's sake. Uncle Wiki, I'll remember not to bathe for a week before I take my next flight. Wow, you are making no friends, that's for sure. Yeah. But I've tried to support the cabin crew wherever I can. Certainly, like, I've had days where, like, you know, we had another company where it was we stuck with the flight attendants the whole time. We had one single fleet of airplanes, so we always stuck with our flight attendants every single leg. And you know, if you ever had that case where, like, you had to go over your duty day, and certainly there were a couple times where the flight attendants did not want to go over the duty day. They're like, we're exhausted, we've done way too much work, we can't go over. You know, I'll be the one that calls crew skid and says, the crew is not going over, period. And I've had them say, well, which crew members said no? And I'm like, it doesn't matter to you. If anybody in this crew said no, that's the end of it. That's the end of it. You can write down I said no if that's what you want to, if you want to write somebody's name down. But at the end of the day, if anybody in this crew said no, then that's the end of it. Yes, sorry. Hayden UK, I did. Sorry. Turn the ship around. I'll have to write that down if I have a sticky note anywhere. And a pen. I swear I saw a pen here like 5 minutes ago, and now I can't see it. I can't find it. Let's see if this pen works. Turn the ship around. But it's something that I think works quite well in the airline industry. I don't think it's perfect. I think we definitely could use some improvement, don't get me wrong. Alright, let me just check the MSA here, because I'm pretty sure we can go lower, and we're going to be way too high on this approach here. So right now the sector that we're in, we are down to 74 I think here. 64, yeah. So let's do that. Let's put in a 7,000. Alright, 7,000 feet. It's set, flight level change. Approach checklist.
Approach checklist. Altimeters.
3008. 3008 is set and cross-checked. Set and checked. Set and checked.
3008. Set. Approach checklist complete.
Alright, I'm going to have to stop chatting because I got to actually focus on what we're doing here. We might actually need a little bit of help on this one here. Let's do...
Cabin crew, prepare for landing. $10,000.
Inbound. There we go. Alright, we got the waypoint sequenced. Alright, we got the waypoint sequenced. Seattle traffic, Alaska 765 is 20 miles south of the field, setting up for an ILS runway 34 left. The airport's off over there. We might be a little bit high still here, so let's get that speed break out. Let's go down.
For your continued safety, flight attendants will now walk through the cabin to secure it for landing. We'll be collecting all service items, newspapers, and any other items you wish to discard or may not be taking off the aircraft with you.
Alright, there's 8,000 descending 7,000. I'm going to put an intercept heading on here now.
Electronic devices. Stow these devices and all other carry-on items.
That's not the right knob at all. I really do know what I'm doing, I swear.
Landing shortly. Thank you.
Let's see if we can do this here. Alright, there's VOR Loc. I don't think I've done that in the sim yet, but it is definitely possible to do that. Alright, so we got VOR Loc. We're going to overshoot slightly, but that's fine. Now that we're on final, we can go down to 5,000. Nope, we're already on the glide slope. Disregard. Intercept the glide slope already. There's SeaTac. Oh, we overshot that final turn a little bit there. Perhaps I should focus on what we're saying now. Did you put your mic in your mouth at the top of the ZPA? I tried to. Approach checklist.
Approach checklist. Altimeters
3008 set.
3008 set. Approach checklist complete.
Alright, start bringing the speed back. See, it's a beautiful day out here in Seattle, so no alternate IFR is working out just fine. We got 5 in the tank still right now. And I turn on FSLTL, but that always tanks my performance, so maybe when we get on the ground I'll turn on FSLTL. You know what we can do though?
1011.
We are doing a pretty good job here. Intercepting final. Let's just get ourselves a gate at SeaTac. It's supposed to be November 18, I believe. Let's see if November 18 actually exists. It apparently does not.
Flight deck. Okay, thanks. Captain, the cabin is secure.
Put November 1 on there. Alright, the cabin is secure, perfect. We won't tell SkyDiva that I took off without waiting for the cabin to be secured earlier. I pretended to call them and they said it was good, so. What did he say? I don't know, I wasn't listening. Yeah, need to take that huge breath. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking. Don't forget the, we've got some beautiful weather at our destination today. Temperature's 25 degrees and clear skies. We thank you very much for flying with Alaska. Flaps 1. Flaps 1.
Speed check.
I think the best thing I ever heard was when Quagmire did a PA on Family Guy. Oh, it was so hilarious.
Flaps 1 set.
Flaps 5.
Set. Speed check.
She does not want to slow down today.
Flaps 5 set.
She might need some speed brake help to just get slowed down a little bit. Ooh. I can tell I'm going to have to watch out for you. Calling me out, making a PA below 10,000 feet.
2500.
Radio altimeter alive. Cabin crew, take your seats.
we have. Well, I like our airline. Our airline does a 30 minutes to landing call. Does a quick PA at 30 minutes to landing. Literally just says 30 minutes to landing. It's really great though because it really kind of gives everybody a heads up on how much
Final
long we
approach fix. The height is checked. Missed approach altitude
Gear down.
is set. Gear down.
Flaps 15.
Speed
Seattle
check.
traffic, Alaska 765. 5 miles final, runway 34 left. Flaps 20.
Check your speed. Flaps 15 set.
Yeah.
Checked.
Seattle traffic, Walker 737 heavy, taxi Bravo to 34 right, Seattle.
Flaps 30. Flaps 30.
Speed check.
1,000.
Landing checklist.
1,000 feet. Not stable.
Landing check.
Landing checklist. Engine star switches. Flaps 30 set.
Continuous.
Speed brake.
Armed.
Landing gear.
Down.
Flaps.
Flaps 30 green light.
Landing checklist complete.
Alright.
Checked. Autopilot off. 500 feet.
Autopilot's off.
400.
Again, I kind of fell victim to not paying attention to the 10,000 foot sterile.
Approaching minimums.
Approaching minimums.
Checked.
Gear up.
Minimums.
Minimums.
Landing.
200. 100. 50. 30. 20. 10.
Speed breaker. Reverses normal. $60 knots. Auto brake disarmed.
Alright, manual braking. Alright, now we're going to exit on Echo, as we said. A little bit of a hilly airport here, isn't it?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the conclusion of our flight.
Check your speed.
I don't even know which thing I'm checking speed for. Seattle traffic, Alaska 765 is clear of runway 34 left on Echo. We'll be crossing runway 34 center and 34 right to the apron.
That's squelch only for that station.
Check, check, check. Why is that not working? Why is that not working? Check. Huh. All this time. That's funny. Alright, we're going to hold here because I didn't realize that we were not transmitting. But I did have to plug in my microphones. What I probably did was I plugged in my microphone after I started B-Pilot. So let's check this again here. Let's just check those settings again here. Hello. Check, check, check. There we go. And Alaska 765. How do we read us now? Yeah, that's us on, we just vacated 3-4 left. Yeah, if you're holding, then we'll cross 3-4 right as quick as we can. Alright, thank you. Crossing 3-4 center and 3-4 right. Alaska 765. And that's why we have Unicom. And it works. The system works. Readability 0. Yeah, he might have been too loud for you guys. He was perfect for me. Can't hear it on stream. Okay, thank you for that. Probably when I reset this. Yeah, that's why. Okay, hold on. Speakers. Alright, now you'll get it. So, yeah, my apologies, guys. I thought I'd set that up properly, but I guess I did not. He just basically said he saw us landing, so he wanted to make sure we were, before he took off, he wanted to try and get a hold of us. And yeah, none of my VATSIM stuff was working, so. But he did say he's going to hold position for now while we cross, because he's got a couple of last checklists to run, so that works out perfectly. So clear to cross. We're crossing all the runways here. It does work when it actually works.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Seattle traffic, Alaska 765 is now clear, runway 34 right.
And Walker 3337 at Seattle will be taking off runway 34 right for southwest departure the Harrop 6, Walker 3337.
There we go. You guys should have heard that time, I hope, right? I didn't actually look down to see if the volume readout moved, but hopefully it heard that time. Yeah, okay. Perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. We didn't have anybody on frequency the whole day anyway, so it's not like I could have really honestly checked it. I thought I checked it though when I started, but I think when I reset it there, then it turned off again. I probably did something wrong. I'm a human being. I really, honestly, and it's funny because I was talking about the checklist manifesto. I used to have a checklist for streaming, and with MSFS, it's easier. Streaming got easier in MSFS. There's less kind of external software I found I was running, but I've got back to the point where I think I need a checklist again to make sure that I have everything set up correctly, because I always have these little things, various little glitches that I forget to do, things I don't forget to set up properly. Like I don't reconfigure my my vPilot, my VATSIM audio to go to my speakers. It's often on my headset, but you guys can't hear my headset. You can only hear the speakers. So I need to change that over. There's so many kind of little steps that I have to do. Like generally from the time I sit down in front of the computer, it's about 30 to 45 minutes to get totally set up for a stream, between restarting the computer, starting the sim, loading the aircraft, loading a flight plan, loading everything. It takes a while to get everything kind of loaded here. It's so empty and lonely here. I'll bring my sim to its knees. Here comes the walker. Nice. It actually has the proper walker paint job in there and everything. Oh, FSLTL, I love you. Like pulling a plane from a hangar, that's always fun. Yeah, but there's just 100 things you got to do to kind of get set up for the stream here. Most of the time, I don't think too much about them. All right. I always mess up some mundane detail. Exactly. Alright, so N1 should be back on the north of this side of this terminal here. I don't know what these gates are, because these are supposed to be N18 in the corner here, but anyways, let's see if we can find our marshaller. Start the APU.
Starting the APU.
I do see a person on the ground there, so that is probably our marshaller. If I was a betting man. Or is it? Maybe not. Nope, it's through there for that aircraft. So maybe it's over here where all the ground equipment is. This says N1 right here. Are there no jet bridges over here? Really? Really? Oh, the heck with that. I'm not going to a gate with no jet bridge. Let's find a different empty gate. I am not going to go park at a gate with no jet bridge. It's bad enough being in Jacksonville.
APU on the buses.
Perfect, thank you. One thing's for sure, FSLTL does add a lot of life to this airport now. Not only is there airplanes, but there's also ground staff dealing with the airplanes. So it definitely adds some life to this airport here. Alright. How about November 6th? What if we change GSX to November 6th, just to make it a little bit more? We're going to use the slides today. It's my type of airline. Let's have some fun. Come on, GSX. Change facility to November 7th. Or November 6th. There. Now it should move everybody over there. Or these gates not line up like that. What the heck? People were there. See, oh, this is labeled as November 1. Interesting. Oh, crying out loud. Poor crying out loud, honestly. I really... It was N1. Hilarious. This is not a problem normally we have in real life. Gate numbers are correct in real life. It's fine. There he is, yeah, there. Okay. Wow. Lights and doors.
Check. Cabin crew, disarm doors and cross-check.
That's hilarious. The scenery does not match the scenery. Thanks, Microsoft. I might have to download some payware scenery for Seattle finally one of these days, because this is just getting frustrating trying to use these gates here. It's made like it's a simple things, but like if they don't match up, it really kind of screws stuff up. There should be a marshal there, but he's probably in the building there. All right, we got the taxi light off, right? Yeah, that's the SOP on this airplane. And different airline. But the SOP that the FS2 crew follows is they disarm the doors as you turn into the gate. So you make a lights and doors call. Make a lights and doors call as you turn into the gate. And what it does is, for us, it's just we have to make sure our taxi lights off so we don't blind the ground guys. But then, yeah, we make the PA for you guys to disarm the doors. All right. Anywho, we're here. Got to head off the buses, so let's go ahead and shut her down. Please remember to submit my flight. Thanks. Turn all that stuff off. Go ahead and get the AP fleet on as well. And now GSX is bringing over the bridge this time. Nice. Automatically. Different airlines have different SOPs. Yeah, the airline I actually work for, they have the same SOP. As soon as you stop and turn off the fast seatbelt sign, that's the sign to disarm the doors. But I guess some airlines that operate the 737, they make a PA just as you're turning into the gate. They don't want you even approaching the gate with the doors armed, I guess. So, I kind of like our way of doing it better, where you wait till the seatbelt sign is turned off. But that's, again, different airlines have decided different ways to do things. Parking checklist. Shutdown checklist.
Shutdown checklist. Fuel pumps off. Propane off. Hydraulic panel set. Flaps
0. Up.
parking brake.
Set.
Engine start levers.
Cut off.
Weather radar.
Off. Off. Off.
Off. Shutdown checklist complete.
Alright, we are done, guys. Welcome to Seattle. We made it. I know it's not the first place you want to be, but it's not a terrible place. Let's see if we can get GSX to unload us here. For some reason, my hotkey's not working anymore. I think I might know why, but anyways. Come on. Alright, request deboarding. That'll get everything over here. Yeah, I can imagine it'd be pretty fun to fly with certain flight crews. Well, and absolutely, there's certain people that you just get along with, and sometimes the most frustrating thing I find about the airline I work for now is because it's a bigger airline with multiple types, the cabin crew and the flight crew never stick together for very long. Other airlines I've previously worked for, you'd be stuck together for 3 days, and you'd get to know people pretty well in 3 days. You'd have 2 layovers together, you'd probably go out for at least drinks at dinner at least once. You get to know people pretty well. I might just turn this down because I feel like that background noise is really loud there. But yeah, like that's probably the biggest thing I miss. Being at a bigger airline, they're able to more efficiently use the cabin crew, so they're always kind of going every which way, and they're doing different turns and under different rules than we are. So I miss that. Like I find like it's not that I don't establish rapport with some of the flight attendants, but in general we don't hang out because we usually most of the time we're not even going to the same hotel at the same time. So I find we don't hang out very much, and that disappoints me. Like in previous airlines, like it's been a one crew concept. It's been 2 pilots, 2 flight attendants, and you really kind of, for 3 or 4 days or whatever, you hang out pretty much the whole time. You spend a lot of time together chatting and whatnot. But the second you get into bigger airlines where A, you have more flight attendants, but B, the flight attendants and the pilots are just on different schedules, I find we just don't hang out as much. We don't get to know each other nearly as well as we used to, and it's a bit disappointing because I find, you know, it's not that I mind hanging out with other pilots too, but the flight attendants are often fun. They share other very different stories, very different perspectives. So yeah, I kind of miss that, hanging out with the flight attendants. But yeah, everybody get off now. Bye-bye. Yeah, and isn't that nice? Like, it's just nice to work with the same person, because everything that happens, you guys feel united. You feel like you're facing it all together. You feel like a real team after like 2 days or 3 days. A single turn or even a single flight together, you don't feel like a team. I mean, you do a little bit to the minimum requirement, but you really don't feel like a team. But when you work together for 2 or 3 days, I've gotten to know some flight attendants really well and worked with them many times. And you start to get that rapport. The team is even easier to work with. The team dynamic is even stronger when you work with each other. I've worked with some fun pilots too, but even the pilots and even the captains and the FOs, like this summer has been just constantly changing. I had one captain who called it speed dating because that's exactly what it felt like. Every single day, he wouldn't fly with the same FO for more than like 2 legs on a pairing. So he'd be out for 4 days and he'd have flown with 5 different guys by the end of 4 days. Even then, you don't get to know people. I mean, we do get to know each other a little bit more in the flight deck because we've got more time and we're kind of forced to sit next to each other for that length of time, as opposed to cabin crew where we got the door, keeping us segregated the whole time. But I find, I find, like, especially if you're only with somebody for a day or so, it's only gonna be 2 legs or whatever. You don't get to know them as well. You're not as committed. So I think it's to the airline's detriment to constantly be changing people, as opposed to having like a well-oiled machine where the crew knows each other. They know each other well. They've built that trust through getting to know each other. And this summer was a complete disaster. Yeah, tell me about it. Not as bad as last summer. Last summer was much worse, I think. But this summer has not been great. It was not we've got it all sorted out, we're going to be fine. The airline executives were all telling us. There have definitely been more than a fair share of issues coming up. The scheduling has not worked out well. My August schedule, I hate. I don't hate it, but like I am very disappointed in it. It's the worst schedule I've had for a while now. I got like 1 line of my bid met on the entire schedule, on the entire bid. It's so far out from what I wanted. It's very disappointing. It's very frustrating. Hopefully when we get out in the summer it'll be a little bit better again, but because I was bidding for some kind of specific stuff, I didn't get anything. But even the days off, I didn't even get half the days off I wanted. That's the other thing that bugs me. I didn't even get half the days off. So very frustrating schedule in August. Also, I'm working a lot. I only have like 11 days off the whole month. The way they worked it out with the sim and everything else, I only have like 11 days off the whole month. It's going to be exhausting. I feel like I might have to take another personal day at some point in August. Anywho, yeah, so we finished that leg. So we're just going to go ahead and submit our completed flight report here. And give it a couple seconds for the server to return it. My flight has been submitted successfully. We are now ready to move on to our next leg, which I'm not going to do today because I am still a little bit sick, and I'm going to take the rest of the day to relax. I got a few things I want to do anyways, but I'm going to take the rest of the day to hopefully relax. I'm supposed to go to work tomorrow, so I would really kind of like to get have a restful day and stop talking, so I stop wearing out my voice. But this is what we're on track for next time. Is we're going to do Seattle up to Anchorage. So it's a bit of a long flight, a little bit of a long stream. Let's see here. It doesn't even have a blocker or flight time in there. Let's see here. Looks like it's scheduled at 3:45, 3 hours and 45 minutes. So hopefully it won't take us that long to do it. But it's going to be a long stream when we go to do it. It's pretty far to Anchorage, so we'll give it 100. We'll give it a cost index of 100 full power and try and get there as fast as we can. But yeah, I hate being such a senior base. I can't hold anything. Yeah, I hear that. I'm pretty junior on the list, so I shouldn't be complaining. But I'm junior at the company, but I've been flying for 20 years. I've been working airlines for 11 years now. I'm tired of being at the bottom of the list. I'm so tired of being at the bottom of the list and not getting anything, especially in the summer when the kids are young and you want to just get stuff done and you want to hang out with them, and you're just, it's horrendous sometimes. But anyways, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that because I'm just going to get depressed. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had fun, Sky Diva. It was great to talk to you, and I hope you join the channel, and hopefully we'll catch you next time. I try to do these weekday flights because that's when I have days off, is during the week. You're probably the same deal, so you'll probably be around for most of my streams, but you'll be left seat soon enough. Oh yeah, because that's going to be even better for my seniorities, going left seat. 7 years and I can't hold turns. I hear you. I hear you. The last company I was at, I supposedly had 6 years of seniority, and every month my schedule got worse, and more and more people got on the list ahead of me. So I was hating the last company. I was hating on it real hard. I was glad to get out of that one. I started at the bottom of a new company, but this is the last company. I'm in a mainline airline. I'm not going anywhere. This is the last job I'm taking in this career, I think. Interesting story. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I was trying to think of stuff to talk about. I know we didn't have too much time, and I haven't had time to really, I don't even know what's going on in the sim world lately. I haven't flown much. I haven't controlled much. I've been kind of out of it, so, and I haven't been feeling well, and I had a whole bunch of stuff to do. This guy just walked in the engine cow. That was well done. Anyways, yeah, guys, fly safe out there. Be safe, whatever you're doing. Enjoy your summer. Get out, enjoy it while it's out there, because it's short. It's way too short, in especially in Canada. It's way too short, but I think even the U.S. is too short. So get out there, enjoy summer while it's out there, and I will try to do a stream. Probably not next week. Probably not going to be able to squeeze one in next week, but probably the week after. I've got to work almost every day next week, so hopefully the week after I'll get one in there. But thanks so much for watching, everybody. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. That's my only appeal I'm going to make. Otherwise, I'll see you guys all out there on the VATSIM skies in the near future. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.